Chapter 519 You people know nothing. Chapter 519. You people know nothing. Just then, someone else interjected. Why isn't that Feng sang? Did someone hit her? Oh, that girl is stunning. Who is she? Feng sang, who's the girl? Yes, tell us. Who is she? That was what the female students were thinking when they spotted Feng Wu, who made them feel jealous despite themselves. Whereas the guys had different thoughts. I can't believe a girl can be this beautiful. Is she one of our students? She can't be, otherwise I would have spotted her a long time ago. She looks amazing. She's exactly what my dream girl looks like. Feng sang seems to know her. That's it. She's the one. Everyone fall back. People kept gathering around them, making for a boisterous scene. All eyes were on Feng Wu, with some gazes envious, some begrudging, some amazed and some fascinated. After being slapped by Feng Wu, and now surrounded by all these onlookers, the sensitive Feng sang almost passed out with fury. Feng Wu, I'm gonna kill you. With that, she drew a soft sword from around her waist. Thud. Once she injected her spiritual essence into the weapon, the blade straightened and turned as hard as a cast iron sword. While everyone was still watching, Feng sang charged at Feng Wu, directing the sword at the point between Feng Wu's eyebrows. Xiao flared up. However, Feng Wu only stood there with a taunting smile on her face. She was already a level 3 spiritual grandmaster. Did Feng sang actually think she could beat Feng Wu? How silly. Almost all the onlookers here were freshmen, and Feng Wu could beat any one of them without breaking a sweat. The sword had almost reached Feng Wu when Xiao ran out and shielded Feng Wu with her own body. Feng sang, what are you doing? Feng sang, put the sword down. Have you forgotten the school rule? No fighting is allowed in Imperial College unless it's in the battle arena. All the guys were displeased to see Feng sang frenziedly attack Feng Wu with a sword. They immediately rushed out, shielding Feng Wu behind them and reprimanding Feng sang harshly. It would have been fine if it was only one of them, but there were so many. Feng sang was almost in tears. A lot of these boys had courted Feng sang before, but now they were all on Feng Wu's side just because Feng Wu was prettier than she was. Feng sang was so angry. Get out of my way. Feng sang yelled. Forgetting herself like this wasn't Feng sang's usual style at all. However, after what Xiao said and having been slapped by Feng Wu, Feng sang completely lost control when she saw how the guys treated Feng Wu differently. Feng sang, what are you doing? Rong Shixing glared at Feng sang. Why can't you be civil and talk it over? What's with the sword? This is unacceptable. Yuan was the president of the student union for the first years, and he was in charge of all his peers. Right now, he was glowering at Feng sang as well. You're way out of line. She's younger and less advanced in cultivation than you. But that doesn't give you the right to bully her like this. Drop the sword now. All the other guys threw dirty looks at Feng sang as well. Feng sang almost passed out from fury. Eyes bloodshot red, she yelled. You people know nothing. Get out of my way. Do you have any idea who she is? She's Feng Wu. Feng Wu? Who was that? After all, it had been 5 years, and not everyone had that long a memory. Chapter 520 Yes, we're on her side. Chapter 520 Yes, we're on her side. However, enough people could still remember. Feng Wu? As in that prodigy Feng Wu? Isn't she dead? No, I heard that she's still alive, but her clan banished her to their hometown. Is she the one whose engagement to His Royal Highness was cancelled? So that's who she is. All eyes were on Feng Wu and everyone was talking. Feng sang looked very pleased. She knew it. As soon as she revealed Feng Wu's history, everyone would laugh at her. No one would take Feng Wu's side anymore. Feng sang pointed her sword at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, kneel and apologize to me now, or I'll kill you this instant. Crossing her hands behind her back, Feng Wu looked at Feng sang with her calm, bright eyes. The look she gave Feng sang made the latter feel like a pathetic clown. Feng sang knew perfectly well what that contemptuous look meant, which was why she was so pissed. Fine. Fine. Suit yourself. Feng Wu, you had it coming. Don't blame me. With those words, Feng sang came at Feng Wu with the sword. However, at that moment, Rong Shixin caught Feng Sang by her wrist. Yuan blocked her way and fixed his cold gaze on her. Most of the other guys glared at Feng Sang as well. Feng Sang was utterly baffled. Hadn't she told them about Feng Wu's past? Shouldn't these people be sneering at Feng Wu now? What was going on here? Rong Shixin was displeased. Feng Sang, I finally see what kind of person you really are. Rong Shixin ground his teeth. Your sister lost her cultivation ability, which was so unfortunate for her. Not only didn't you show any sympathy or look out for her, you revealed the saddest thing that happened to her in front of so many people, putting her wound out there for all to see. You're despicable. Feng Sang was speechless. What? Yuan stared at Feng Sang as well. Feng Sang, I'd always attributed your aloof behavior to the fact that you're above worldly considerations, and that you're as pure and elegant as a white lotus. There was a time that I actually admired you. I never thought that you could be this cruel and evil. I guess I judged poorly. Taking a fancy to you was the worst decision I ever made. What? Feng Sang almost had a stroke. Yuan was the most talented and capable student of all the first years. Even Mr. Liu had received Yuan himself. So many girls were infatuated with Yuan, and even Feng Sang had a secret crush on him. However, Yuan had just said those words to her. Feng Sang thought she was going to explode. She pointed the sword at Feng Wu. You, I'm gonna kill you. I will. Yuan waved his hand and Feng Sang stumbled back, then fell to the ground. Yuan then turned to Feng Wu and cupped his fists. Miss Feng Wu, nice to meet you. My name is Yuan. Please remember that name. He gave Feng Wu a nod then left. Feng Wu was baffled. Hello? Why should I remember your name? What's wrong with that guy? Rong Shixin was much more enthusiastic. So you're Feng Wu. Hello, I'm Rong Shixin, you can call me Xiao Xian. Can I call you Xiao Wu? That naturally sociable manner reminded Feng Wu of Feng Sun. She shook her head and said indifferently, I don't think so. The others burst out laughing. Rong Shixin rubbed his nose. He was from a good family. His father was a lord and a third-ranked official, which made him a respected member of the younger generation. Chapter 521 Preposterous. Chapter 521. Preposterous. After he got into Imperial College, he had become even more popular. However, Feng Wu had just turned him down outright. But Rong Shixin believed that Feng Wu was only playing hard to get. Girls like her were so much fun to court, weren't they? Feng Wu frowned at the hubbub. She took Chaoga's hand, then turned to leave. Xiao Wu. Rong Shixin ran after her. Feng Wu cast a stern look at him. Rong Shixin felt as if he had been stabbed in the heart. He got the creeps and he stumbled back involuntarily. That was strange. Hadn't Feng Wu lost all her cultivation ability? Why was she so scary? Feng Wu, what are you doing here in Imperial College? Are you here to hit on guys? Feng Sang's voice rang out behind them. Guanjing chuckled. Is she here to tour the school? She won't be able to enroll anyway, so why not use the open day to enjoy the view? Many of the girls snickered at those words. They looked at Feng Wu in such a condescending manner. So what if she had once been a genius? She was completely useless now. She wasn't even qualified to take the exam, let alone become a student of Imperial College. If I recall correctly, our school is recruiting new students in a few days, right? That's right. You have to be a level 9 spiritual master at least to take the exam. Too bad that some people don't even meet that. All they can do is lure guys in with that pretty face. Haha, now I know why Feng Wu is here. Why is that? Because since she can't get into Imperial College herself, she has to depend on that pretty face. She's going to find a rich husband here, isn't she? Hahaha. Many girls laughed upon hearing those words. Feng Wu was so beautiful that the guys couldn't help but take her side. As a result, many girls turned Feng Wu into their imaginary enemy. Rong Shixin, you're just one of the potential moneybags she's digging into. Hahaha. Rong Shixin, wake up. She's casting her net all over the place. Rong Shixin, are you seriously going to take a useless girl back home? That's just humiliating. Rong Shixin's face turned livid. Exasperated, Xiao rested her hands on her waist as tears welled up in her eyes. Shut up. Xiao Wu can't get into Imperial College? Says who? We're here today to register. Wow. A hush fell over the crowd at those words. Everyone gave Xiao strange looks. Feng rubbed her ears. What did you say? Sticking out her chest, Xiao said righteously, I said Xiao Wu is here to register for Imperial College's entrance exam. And she's not the only one. I'm going to take the exam as well. Hahaha. Oh God, that's hilarious. My tummy aches, help. Hahaha. I'm cracking up here. That has to be the funniest thing I've ever heard. Many girls laughed until their stomachs ached. Oh God. A useless girl without so much as a streak of spiritual essence was going to take the exam. As for that silly girl Xiao, she was a level 7 at best. How dare she talk about taking the exam as well? That was preposterous. Rong Shixin also looked at Xiao strangely. You are. Chapter 522 There's one possibility. Chapter 522. There's one possibility. Xiao was furious. What was wrong with these people? She and Feng Wu were here just to register for the entrance exam. Xiao Wu was so smart and brilliant that she could surpass them without breaking a sweat. Where did their sense of superiority come from? And what made them think that they could laugh at Xiao Wu like this? That pissed Xiao off. She made up her mind that she would become an excellent cultivator. One day, she would be strong enough to sneer at all those people who used to laugh at Xiao Wu. Hahaha. Just look at that butterball. She's cross. She looks so funny with her cheeks puffed up. Hahaha, are you seeing this? The butterball wants to kill us with her eyes. Oh my, I think the butterball wants to fight us to death. By butterball, they were obviously referring to Xiao. All those butterballs infuriated Xiao. No teenage girl would want such a nickname, especially one that used to be so pretty. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her back looked both stubborn and sad. Feng Wu's hand landed on her shoulder. Xiao turned around with red-rimmed eyes. Silly girl. Feng Wu rubbed her head. You'll soon be as fit as you were. I promise. Xiao beamed at Feng Wu with tears in her eyes. Wiping away her tears, Xiao looked up at Feng Wu, whom she trusted, and nodded with a smile. Yes. However, Rong Shixin was looking at Feng Wu in a sympathetic way. Are you really going to register for the exam? Yes. Feng Wu nodded. Rong Shixin didn't know what to say. Guanjing snickered all of a sudden. What? Correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't registration closed already? That's right. It closed at noon, didn't it? It's already the afternoon now, hahaha. Many gave Feng Wu funny looks. Some even sneered. If you're really going to find an excuse, at least find a plausible one. How are you going to register when the deadline has already passed? Well, maybe she really is here to do that. Don't be so harsh. Guanjing said, she really is here to do that? Don't make me laugh. One is a level 7 at most and the other has no cultivation ability whatsoever. You're telling me that they're here to register for the exam? Guanjing went on, there's one possibility though. What's that? Guanjing said, I heard that the school has a special rule. If a person can get recommendation letters from 3 members of the Board of Education, they can be treated as an exceptional case and be registered. Hahaha. Many onlookers laughed until they were in tears. Those 2? Get letters from the big shots? And 3 of them? You've got to be kidding me. No way. No one was going to believe that. Xiao trembled with fury. You snobs. 2 of the big guys already gave us letters, and we'll get the 3rd one. However, the others only guffawed. Feng Wu shook her head and tugged at Xiao. Let's go. There was nothing more to say to these people. Feng Wu then led Xiao toward the president's office. Many were looking forward to making fun of her. Look, hahaha. Feng Wu is going to the president's office. Guanjing said, well, after what she said, she can't just leave, right? The least she can do is make a show of it. Where else can she go if not the president's office? Hahaha. Chapter 523, The President of Imperial College. Chapter 523, The President of Imperial College. The Principal's Office. Every day, Mr. Lu would recline on a chaise lounge for some rest after he was done with his cultivation. A young servant gingerly entered the room and whispered something in Mr. Lu's ear. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu were here together? Weren't those two fighting all the time? He wondered what the fight was about this time. Rubbing his forehead, Mr. Lu smiled wryly. It seemed that he wasn't going to get that rest this evening after all. Please show them in. Mr. Lu gave a wave of his hand. Before long, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu walked in together. Old Lu, there you are. Good. Grand Secretary Feng greeted the president with those words. Priest Wu looked delighted as well. Haha, Old Lu. Here, sit with me and let's talk. Huh. Mr. Lu found this very unusual. Weren't these two at each other's throats all the time? Especially the proud Grand Secretary Feng, who looked down on Priest Wu for not being professionally trained. Whereas Priest Wu had a short temper and despised those that thought highly of themselves. Hence, these two people would start a cockfight whenever they ran into each other, which was such a pain in the neck. However, they didn't seem to be fighting at all today. Mr. Lu looked at the two of them in bewilderment. Priest Wu pulled Mr. Lu near, then sat the latter down at the table. There, Old Lu. Take a seat first. That gave Mr. Lu the creeps. On the other side, Grand Secretary Feng laid a piece of paper in front of him and rubbed an ink stick on an inkstone himself. Mr. Lu was astonished. Was this an illusion? Grand Secretary Feng was such a proud figure that his most common posture was his hands crossed behind his back and his chin raised. Even Mr. Lu himself wasn't treated much differently from everyone else. But now, the old man had laid out a piece of paper for him, and he was even preparing the ink. What was more, Grand Secretary Feng even dipped the writing brush in the ink, then handed it to Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu didn't know how to react. What on earth is going on here? He was so flustered. Priest Wu said, we ran into a girl recently and she has an amazing gift for formations. But cultivation-wise, she's a little bit behind, and she wants to become a student of Imperial College. Mr. Lu gave him a wry smile. Let her apply for the formation department then. He didn't understand what was bothering these two. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng both gave Mr. Lu woeful looks. What? Those expressions made Mr. Lu rather jumpy. Priest Wu said with a long face, we wouldn't have come here if she could apply for the formation department. Grand Secretary Feng sighed. To be honest, what more can we teach her there? Priest Wu sighed along with him. The girl is as good as either of us in formations. How are we supposed to teach her when she gets in? Mr. Lu's eyes lit up. They had found such a promising student? He was instantly intrigued. For Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng had never recommended anyone before. This time, however, they couldn't stop praising this girl, and were doing things that were so out of character for them. Mr. Lu was so curious. And the girl wants to get into the martial arts department. Both Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng gave Mr. Lu woeful looks. Take the exam then. Mr. Lu shrugged. What's wrong with that? If she passes the exam, she can get in. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng exchanged looks and Priest Wu said in the end, the girl wanted to, but what? But she's not as strong in all the subjects. Her cultivation level is a little. Chapter 524 I need to see her. Chapter 524. I need to see her. Not as strong? You mean that she hasn't reached level 9 yet? Yes. That shouldn't be a problem. Mr. Lu waved his hand matter-of-factly. Real talent is hard to come by. Don't we have an exemption rule here in Imperial College? As long as 3 members of the Education Board. He stopped abruptly and looked from Grand Secretary Feng to Priest Wu. And those two nodded back at him. Mr. Lu said, that's why you've been fawning on me the whole time. You're here for that letter. Priest Wu chuckled. Brother Lu, Boss Lu, it's like you said. She has real talent and that's so hard to come by. You also said she's not as strong in all subjects. Mr. Lu was disgruntled. Exactly how weak is she in the other subjects that you two have to go this far? Mr. Lu couldn't understand. Both old men were valuable assets of the empire. One was usually arrogant and the other irascible, And both were equally stubborn. It was amazing to see them work as a team to ingratiate themselves with Mr. Liu. Well, both old men were embarrassed to bring up the subject and looked at one another. Mr. Liu rubbed his chin. If her performance is so lopsided and her formation skills so amazing, it has to be her cultivation level that's not as advanced. How bad? Level 9? Both old men shook their heads. Level 8. They shook their heads again. Level 7. Still shaking. Level 6. The look on Mr. Liu's face began to change. Both old men remained silent. Don't tell me that she's only a level 5. Mr. Liu jumped to his feet. That wasn't lopsided but was completely. No, Priest Wu said gingerly after glancing at Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu asked, so what level is she? He had lost all hope after hearing that she wasn't even a level 5. She has none. Grand Secretary Feng scratched his head awkwardly. Mr. Liu burst into laughter. Haha, you two are really. Have you come all this way just to tell me a joke? None. That makes her an ordinary non-cultivator. You. Seeing the looks on Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu's faces, Mr. Liu stopped short. You're telling the truth. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu smiled at him in embarrassment. Mr. Liu made a last-ditch attempt. If her spiritual essence hasn't been activated. Priest Wu smiled bitterly. To be more precise, the girl lost all her cultivation ability. She has no spiritual essence at all. Mr. Liu was speechless. To have lost her cultivation ability was worse than to have unactivated spiritual essence. He sat back down, leaned back in his chair, and became very quiet. He sat up all of a sudden, stared at the other two, and said in a solemn tone, You do realize that spiritual essence is fundamental to formations? Without it, the girl won't be able to get too far in the study of formations. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng exchanged looks and both smiled bitterly. Old Liu, how much further do you want her formation skills to go? At her current level, the things she has shown us are already as advanced as what we can do. And these two old men were top formation masters in all of the empire. Mr. Liu rubbed his chin. It's not that I don't believe you, but at least I need to see her first. Chapter 525 Mr. Principal. Chapter 525 Mr. Principal. I'm sure you'll like her. Priest Wu said cheerfully. Mr. Liu snorted. Not necessarily. Just as Grand Secretary Feng was about to send for Feng Wu, footsteps came from outside. The young servant entered the room and said in a low voice, Miss Feng Wu is here. Mr. Liu threw a dirty look at Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu. I see you came prepared. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu rubbed their chins. They had told Xiao Wu to stay behind, but she had still come. However, the timing was perfect. Feng Wu walked in with Xiaoga. Mr. Liu stared at Feng Wu with eyes as cold and deep as a dark abyss. It was rather terrifying. Xiaoga shuddered and hid behind Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu had kept her composure since entering the room. She was graceful, undisturbed, and completely unaffected by Mr. Liu's aura. Mr. Liu looked confused. Why did this girl look familiar? And you are? Mr. Liu, my name is Feng Wu, Feng Wu replied. Xiaoga shuddered, then followed suit. I'm Duan Xiaoga. This man was the head of Imperial College, whose superiority was second only to the emperor. Even Xiaoga's grandfather couldn't get an audience with this man. Xiaoga was so excited. Mr. Liu was rather surprised. Wasn't the girl afraid of him at all? Priest Wu said in a hurry, she's the one. She's as advanced in her formation skills as one can be, but her cultivation level is not as satisfying. Mr. Liu darted a look at Priest Wu. Not as satisfying. She couldn't cultivate at all. Mr. Liu frowned. Grand Secretary Feng said, once Xiao Wu is admitted into Imperial College, she can always go to the formation department if the martial arts department won't have her. Mr. Liu waved Grand Secretary Feng off and kept his gaze on Feng Wu. Feng Wu, where have I heard that name before? That's it. You're the Feng Wu. Mr. Liu looked shocked. How could he not know that name? Feng Wu used to be a prodigy second only to Jun Linyuan, and was a figure that had amazed everyone. She had only been 8 back then, But Mr. Lu had already wished to take her in as a student of Imperial College, so that he could teach her himself and prevent her from going astray or bringing harm to herself. He never thought that the next time they met would be 5 years later. Yes, I'm that Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. When Mr. Lu looked at Feng Wu again, he felt very sorry for her. That amazing girl had become a good-for-nothing. Pained him to think about it. Mr. Lu shook his head and heaved a long sigh. Kiddo, you have no cultivation ability. Which means that the martial arts department isn't the right place for you, Mr. Lu said sincerely. You should choose the formation department. You'll do wonderfully there. Even Mr. Lu had to admire Feng Wu's capability. When a door shut, God opened a window for her, and she was as much a genius as before. Mr. Lu felt so sorry for the girl. The empire had lost more than just a great potential warrior. Mr. Lu couldn't bring himself to see Feng Wu this way. He gave a wave of his hand. Please leave. He wouldn't let Feng Wu enroll in the martial arts department. For one, it would pain him so much to see the once genius girl become an ordinary person. For another, Feng Wu wouldn't be able to take it when she saw all her peers make progress when she couldn't. Chapter 526 Hahaha. Chapter 526. Hahaha. For those two reasons, Mr. Lu turned Feng Wu down before she had a chance to speak. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu were shocked. How could that be? Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu. Both old men cried out in unison. Would Mr. Lu ignore their request outright? Mr. Lu was very straightforward. She isn't an ideal choice for the martial arts department, nor for Imperial College. Therefore, no. Once Mr. Lu put it that way, there was nothing more Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu could say. They turned to Feng Wu and sighed. Xiao Wu, it's out of our hands now. You! Feng Wu shook her head adamantly. Mr. Feng, Mr. Wu, may I have a minute alone with Mr. Lu? Mr. Lu smirked. Feng Wu, I don't care what you're going to say. I said no, and no it is. Moreover, registration has closed, and at least for this year, you've lost your chance. He practically shouted those words. He hoped that he could make Feng Wu see some sense that way. However, what he didn't know was, because of the earlier incident, many were eager to know what was going on with Feng Wu, so much so that quite a few students were lingering outside the principal's office. Among those students were Guanjing and Rong Shixin. Guanjing grinned when she heard the principal's words. She dashed off toward the Year 1 cultivation room. I've got news. Big news. Her voice reached the room before she did. What is it? Guanjing, didn't you follow Feng Wu out to see how defeated she would be when she left? Has she gone already? Did she really get into the principal's office? Everyone was curious. Feng Sang was in the crowd and she looked at Guanjing with unblinking eyes. Guanjing went up to Feng Sang, and only when all eyes were on her did she say in a gloating voice, I think everyone knows what Feng Wu did just then. Yes. I followed Feng Wu out just then and saw her go all the way to the principal's office. Wow. She really went there? How? Then what? Did she register? Guanjing shushed the others with a hand gesture. A hush fell over the crowd. It turned out that Guanjing was unable to hold back her laughter. She laughed and laughed until she trembled all over and tears streaked her cheeks. Everyone was bewildered. What on earth happened? Why was Guanjing laughing so hard? Tell us. That's right. Stop laughing. Tell us now. You're killing me here. Guanjing finally managed to stop laughing, and in a trembling voice she said, Feng Wu did indeed see Mr. Lu, and Mr. Lu talked to her. What? Everyone was jealous and excited. Mr. Lu was such a superior figure that one couldn't just see him as they pleased. But Feng Wu had been granted an audience. They would be lying if they didn't admit that they were jealous. Guanjing went on. Feng Wu did indeed see Mr. Lu. Why am I so certain? Because I heard Mr. Lu talk to her. Mr. Lu said, Feng Wu, I don't care what you're going to say. I said no, and no it is. Moreover, registration has closed, and at least for this year you've lost your chance. Chapter 527 Old Man Ba's Letter. Chapter 527, Old Man Ba's letter. Everyone fell silent after Guanjing said those words. They burst into laughter right after that. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Many of them laughed so hard that they were in tears and trembled all over. Some even lay flat on their stomachs and thumped the ground with their fists. Ha 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 ha. Feng Wu so had that coming. Mr. Lu was so right. He said no, and no it is. That girl should just shut up. Registration has long closed. Did Feng Wu think that the school would bend the rules just for her? She really thinks too highly of herself. Who the hell does she think she is? Many of the girls had a biased opinion of Feng Wu to begin with and weren't able to judge objectively. They couldn't be happier to hear about Feng Wu's predicament and used all the sarcastic and contemptuous words they could think of. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu exchanged looks after Mr. Lu's announcement, and both saw resignation in each other's eyes. After all, Mr. Lu was the one who called the shots here in Imperial College. Hence they lost all hope. Xiao Wu. Priest Wu wanted to show Feng Wu out. However, Feng Wu kept her gaze on Mr. Lu the whole time and looked completely undisturbed. The girl had the bearing of a great general. Mr. Lu, who was always looking for new talent, felt even more sorry for Feng Wu now, and couldn't bring himself to look at her. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu finally realized what kind of girl Feng Wu really was. She was the most stubborn girl they had ever met. When she set her mind on something, she wouldn't let her decision be affected by anyone. Well, the two old men shook their heads and left the room. Kiddo, even if you go down on your knees and plead with your tears, you won't be able to change my mind. This is my final verdict. Mr. Lu gave a disclaimer first to exclude any possibilities. Feng Wu smiled. I'm not going to kneel, but I do have a letter for you. Mr. Lu frowned at Feng Wu. Meanwhile, Feng Wu took a thick envelope out of her chest pocket and put it on the table. That was way too thick for an ordinary letter. The frown on Mr. Lu's face grew bigger. Judging by how certain the girl looked, could she have stuffed the envelope with money? The look Mr. Lu gave Feng Wu was even more stern now. A person could be without cultivation ability, but he wouldn't stand for such despicable behavior. At that thought, Mr. Lu didn't even look at the envelope, but only stared at Feng Wu. Take it back. He really didn't like this girl now. Feng Wu looked at Mr. Lu in bewilderment. According to Old Man Ba, he and Mr. Lu had gone through hell together and were best buddies. But from the way Mr. Lu reacted to the letter, he didn't seem to know Old Man Ba at all. You really don't want to have a look? No. Mr. Lu refused her outright. Feng Wu frowned. But. Not buts. Mr. Lu's face was livid. Get out. Now. He had determined that Feng Wu was here to bribe him and he was furious. That explained her behavior. She had asked those two guys to leave first so that she could stay behind and bribe him. Feng Wu, I'm so disappointed at what you've become. Get out. Get out of my sight. Mr. Lu said sternly. Feng Wu sighed and said in a sorry tone, so much for being Old Man Ba's best buddy. He told me that when you two were in Inferno City, he shielded you from a sword with his own body and he barely survived that wound. Old Man Ba? Mr. Lu asked. Chapter 528 Jun Linyuan. Come out. Chapter 528 Jun Linyuan. Come out. Old Man Ba. Mr. Lu shot up from his chair and grabbed Feng Wu by her wrist. Old Man Ba? Which Old Man Ba? Feng Wu looked at him innocently. You haven't heard of Old Man Ba? But the guy said that he was pretty well known in the Imperial capital. Was he just bragging then? You mean Ba-e? Mr. Lu cried out in surprise. I have no idea. Old Man Ba never told us his real name. He was only Master Ba, Dr. Ba, or Miracle Ba to us. Mr. Lu was exasperated and reached out with a hand. Give me that letter. Feng Wu glanced at him unhurriedly. I thought you didn't want to read it no matter what. Mr. Lu couldn't wait any longer and snatched the letter from Feng Wu. He saw the words on the envelope. For Lu III's eyes only. Yes, that was the man's handwriting. Mr. Lu tore the envelope open in a hurry. In it was a thick stack of papers, not the money he had assumed it was. It took Mr. Lu as long as 15 minutes to finish reading the long letter. Afterwards, Mr. Lu sat dazed in his chair and was lost in thought. Xiao stared at Mr. Lu in bewilderment, then poked Feng Wu with a finger. Xiao, what's going on with Mr. Lu? He looks so sad. Stirred by Xiao's voice, Mr. Lu looked at Feng Wu and felt as if he had woken up in another world. Little Feng Wu, did you say that you were going to apply for the martial arts department? Yes. Feng Wu nodded. Mr. Lu narrowed his eyes and looked conflicted. You do realize that insisting on getting into the martial arts department isn't going to do you any good? Mr. Lu said earnestly. Feng Wu smiled and said proudly, I know what I'm doing. Mr. Lu nodded. Despite her young age, she gave Mr. Lu the feeling that he was talking to an adult. What was more, she was more level-headed than a lot of adults he knew. The majority of that long letter talked about how amazing Feng Wu was. She was smart, hardworking, talented, and so on. Mr. Lu almost frowned. Wasn't that a bit too exaggerated? If that's the case, well, Mr. Lu was going to grant Feng Wu her wish. Xiao almost jumped to her feet in excitement when all of a sudden, that young servant came in hastily and whispered something in Mr. Lu's ear. Mr. Lu looked confused, but rose to his feet anyway. He then turned to Feng Wu and Xiao. Xiao Wu, how about you take your friend inside and find a book to read? Feng Wu realized that he was receiving a distinguished guest. No problem. As soon as Feng Wu and Xiao went into the study, footsteps came from outside. Mr. Lu. Feng Wu found that voice rather familiar. She had heard it somewhere before. Mr. Lu greeted the man with a nod. General Chong, to what do I owe this pleasure? General Chong. As in Chong-san, who worked for Jun Linyuan. Chong-san smiled. Mr. Lu, you flatter me. I'm here to bring a message from His Royal Highness. Of course. Chong-san smiled. His Royal Highness said that if a Miss Feng Wu comes here to ask for your help, please turn her down. Mr. Lu's pupils contracted and he stared at Chong-san. As the principal of Imperial College, Mr. Lu was only below the emperor in status, and he was roughly on the same level as the crown prince. Chapter 529 Miss Feng is here? What? Chapter 529 Miss Feng is here? What? Jun Linyuan himself was a student of Imperial College, but he was giving commands to his principal now. Mr. Lu was a little displeased. Chong-san nodded. That was His Royal Highness's instruction, word for word. His Royal Highness also said that he'll owe you one. Jun Linyuan said that? Well, that was. What if I insist on doing as I please? Mr. Lu stroked his beard and said casually. Chong-san chuckled. No one has ever said no to His Royal Highness. That was apart from that fierce, untamed Miss Feng Wu, Chong-san added in his head. So, if I don't do as told, His Royal Highness is going to cause me to lose my job? Mr. Lu took a deep breath and there was anger in his eyes. Chong-san smiled. Mr. Lu, you're overthinking it. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. Feng Wu and Xiao were right in the study, and the room wasn't exactly soundproof. Hence, they heard everything Chong-san and Mr. Lu said. Xiao flared up. As impulsive as she always was, she rushed out from behind the curtain and yelled at Chong-san. Who the hell are you? What do you mean by turning Feng Wu away? Why can't we apply for Imperial College? Why do you care? How can you do such nasty deeds behind our back? You people are despicable and nosy and evil. Chong-san stared at Xiao in disbelief. The girl had just yelled at him, and he wasn't the only one she had lashed out at. Even His Royal Highness had been insulted. Someone in this world was actually bold enough to curse the crown prince. Chong-san was too astonished to react. Xiao, on the other hand, didn't realize how shocking her words were. She shoved Chong-san hard and the latter stumbled backward. Chong-san looked at Xiao in disbelief. Resting her hands on her waist, Xiao snapped, "Stop gawking. We heard everything you said. Every word of it." Humph. Chong-san looked behind Xiao and spotted Feng Wu, who had an indecipherable look on her face. Chong-san was at a loss over what to say. "Oh, Miss Feng Wu was here? What?" The muscles in Chong-san's cheeks twitched, his mouth fell open and his mind went blank. This fifth daughter of the Feng clan hadn't intimidated him at the beginning, for even Feng Yanfeng had to address him as General Chang. However, after Feng's reminder the other day, he would rather offend His Royal Highness than piss Miss Feng Wu off. She was untouchable. Chang-san put on a bitter face and didn't know what to do. Feng Wu kept her gaze on him as she went up to him. She then smiled casually. Your master said himself that if I came to Mr. Liu for help, I should be turned away. Feng Wu's voice was as light as a feather and very calm. However, if one looked closely enough, they would recognize the look in her eyes as the momentary peace before a storm. Chang-san was flustered. He didn't know how to answer that question, so, in a whoosh, Chang-san jumped out the window and was soon out of sight. Feng Wu was speechless. So was Xiao. And Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu turned to Feng Wu and said in a stern voice, Xiao Wu, it's not that I won't help you, but you heard it yourself. His Royal Highness won't leave you alone. Feng Wu gritted her teeth and flames seemed to shoot out of her eyes as she clenched her fists. Mr. Liu smiled bitterly. Since His Royal Highness has decided to step in, even if I write that letter for you, His Royal Highness will find some other way to interfere. He can still make it impossible for you. Chapter 530 Miss Wu is here. Chapter 530. Miss Wu is here. Xiao was exasperated. But why? He's the crown prince, but you're the principal of Imperial College. How can he order you around? Didn't some former principal punish a crown prince once, and no harm came to him afterward? Mr. Liu smiled bitterly. That's right. I enjoy the same status as His Royal Highness, but times have changed. This is Jun Linyuan's time. Please listen to me. The two of you, especially Xiao Wu, should pack your things and leave the imperial capital. Kiddo, it's so obvious that the crown prince doesn't like you. Feng Wu took a deep breath and looked at Mr. Liu. So, I can take the exam if Jun Linyuan says yes. Of course, said Mr. Liu. Everything will be fine if you can persuade His Royal Highness. But His Royal Highness dislikes you so much that he sent someone with that reminder. How are you going to change his mind? That's just not going to happen. Mr. Liu gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look, then heaved a sigh. Feng Wu promptly left the office, so fast that she looked like a gust of wind. She was furious. Xiao wanted to follow Feng Wu, but the latter stopped her. Go to General Secretary Feng and start working on the written exam. After all, we only have 7 days. Time is of the essence here. Mr. Liu didn't know what to say. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu, who had come back in, were also speechless. Xiao said with a long face, Xiao Wu, we can't even register for the exam. What's the point preparing for it? It's a waste of our energy. Says who? I'm going to take the exam and no one is going to stop me. Feng Wu flared up. He was the one who had given her the task and he was the one standing in her way now. Jun Linyuan, damn you. In the Crown Prince's residence outside the royal palace. Achoo! The Crown Prince sneezed. He rubbed his nose. Was someone talking about him? What time is it now? The Crown Prince was reclining on a soft couch and casually feeding the fish in the pond. It's 6:45, replied Feng immediately. Rubbing his nose, Jun Linyuan looked up at the bird soaring in the blue sky and he gloated. That girl wouldn't be able to run any faster after what he did to her. Let's see how fast you'll run to me this time, the Crown Prince thought proudly. Just then, whoosh! Chang-san rushed in like a gust of wind and dropped to his knees in front of Jun Linyuan. With a long face he said, Your Royal Highness. Jun Linyuan frowned. Yes. Your Royal Highness, I'm guilty of a crime which even my death cannot atone for. Speak. Jun Linyuan was displeased by the interruption. Your Royal Highness, I delivered the message to Mr. Liu of Imperial College as you instructed. But I didn't know that Miss Wu was in the study at the moment, and she heard everything. Your Royal Highness, I'm guilty. Chang-san was almost frightened to death. According to Feng, His Royal Highness was in love with Miss Wu, and Miss Wu wasn't to know about that message at all. But he was so dead. Chang-san felt a chilly sensation on his neck, as if he was going to lose his head at any moment. However, the Crown Prince only looked down at him with his cold, brooding eyes. What are you guilty of? Huh. Chong-san was dumbfounded. Didn't His Royal Highness like Miss Wu? Jun Linyuan smirked. Don't tell me you think I like that stupid girl. What? Chong-san was even more baffled. Didn't His Royal Highness like her? Exasperated, Jun Linyuan smacked the table. Chapter 531 Jun Linyuan Yu. Chapter 531 Jun Linyuan Yu. I think she's a silly girl and I teased her a bit. That's all. Do you seriously think I'm in love with her? Have you lost your mind? Chong-san was completely at a loss. Feng Wu charged into the Crown Prince's residence in a fury. Had this been some other day, Feng Wu would have been stopped at the gate. However, after Granny Gong's reorganization, everyone in the residence realized Feng Wu's importance now. Even those who hadn't met Feng Wu in person made sure that they studied her portrait until they could remember her face, fearing that they might accidentally offend her and die a miserable death. Hence, when Feng Wu arrived outside the front gate of the residence, she thought that they were going to give her a hard time. As a matter of fact, she was prepared for it. However, the guard almost jumped to his feet as soon as he spotted Feng Wu. Miss Wu! Miss Wu is here. Quickly! You people move! Go tell Mr. Feng and Granny Gong and everyone in the residence. Red alert! The news seemed to take flight and traveled to all corners of the residence in no time. At that moment, Granny Gong was working in the residence with dozens of maids and she was telling them off. It was rather intense and no one dared go near them. Those getting excoriated were the same ones that used to work under Granny Yu. The guard rushed into the courtyard at that moment and whispered something to Granny Gong's maid. The young maid was called Xiao and her eyes lit up as soon as she heard the news. She decided that it couldn't be delayed further, so she quickly went up to Granny Gong and whispered into her ear. Miss Wu is here? Granny Gong, who had looked so stern only seconds ago, smiled wholeheartedly. She forgot about those maids right away and hurried off. Where is Miss Wu? Have you welcomed her in? Is tea ready? What about the clean towel for her to clean her hands? Anne! Granny Gong ran so fast that Xiao had a hard time catching up with her. Outside, Feng Wu stood there bewildered, as the guard disappeared into the house. Did she have that terrifying a face? Feng Wu had yet to figure out what was going on when Granny Gong rushed out. Oh my Miss Wu, it's you. Come in, come in. You're such a rare guest. We're so glad to see you here. Here's a warm towel for you to clean your hands. And please have some fragrant pine tea. Granny Gong couldn't be any more enthusiastic and hospitable. As the saying went, don't slap a smiling face. After seeing Granny Gong's benevolent countenance and enjoying her considerate hospitality, Feng Wu was greatly appeased. Where's Jun Linyuan? Feng Wu took a deep breath. Granny Gong was great at reading faces. One look at Feng Wu's face and she knew that Miss Wu was mad. Moreover, it had to be something to do with His Royal Highness. Recalling how proud His Royal Highness was and how unbending Miss Wu could be, Granny Gong felt at her wits' end. Granny Gong said, His Royal Highness is by the pond. How about? I can get there myself. Feng Wu then headed straight for the pond, while Granny Gong followed her closely. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince was telling Chong-san off. I think she's a silly girl and I teased her a bit. That's all. Do you seriously think I'm in love with her? Have you lost your mind? Feng rubbed his forehead and looked up at the sky. Chong-san looked from Jun Linyuan to Feng. Which one was he supposed to listen to now? Jun Linyuan, you're the one who lost his mind. Feng Wu walked out from behind a tree and glared at Jun Linyuan. Chapter 532 Slap. Chapter 532 Slap. Seeing Feng Wu's aggressive attitude, Granny Gong smacked her own forehead. Oh no. Feng shifted his gaze to her at the same time. Both of them were speechless. They knew too well what to expect. Both took a few steps back, hid themselves in the bushes, and stood there facing each other with their heads lowered. They stood very still. At the same time, Jun Linyuan looked up and saw Feng Wu charging at him. Before he could react, Feng Wu strode to his side, jumped on him and wrapped her fingers around his neck. Jun Linyuan, do you have any idea how annoying you are? Has Chong-san lost his mind? You're the one without a mind. You told me to apply for Imperial College, but you're the one stopping me from registering. What on earth do you want? Are you having fun teasing me like this? Am I your pet? Something you can play with when you're happy and kick around when you're not? Oh, Jun Linyuan thought. Well, I like to kick you around even when I'm happy. The more Feng Wu thought about it, the angrier and more aggrieved she became. She wanted to throttle this damn crown prince. Jun Linyuan felt rather diffident when he saw Feng Wu lashing out like this. Say it. What do you want? Feng Wu straddled Jun Linyuan and tightened her grip, her cheeks flushed with her vexation. This was such a suggestive position. He could feel her soft body, and it was such a temptation. Jun Linyuan followed his instincts. He raised his head and kissed Feng Wu on the mouth. Feng Wu was astonished. Her eyes opened wide and she stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. She was furious. How could this happen when she was here to get even with Jun Linyuan? This was unbelievable. Infuriated, Feng Wu pushed Jun Linyuan away and slapped him hard on the cheek. Jun Linyuan, what's your problem? Smack. There was the crisp sound of the slap. Feng and Granny Gong jumped at that sound. Visit on our novelful. They looked in the direction of the pond in unison. Taken by surprise, Jun Linyuan was dazed. Feng Wu released him and quickly fell back. Feng and Granny Gong were mortified. They had never expected Miss Wu to be so bold. She had slapped none other than Jun Linyuan himself. Jun Linyuan, the most terrifying person in the empire. Miss was so. Even the calm onlookers Feng and Granny Gong were a little worried now. For they couldn't tell what Jun Linyuan would do when he went berserk. Feng Wu only realized what she had done when she looked into Jun Linyuan's bloodshot eyes. She turned to flee. However, the difference in their strength was too significant. Feng Wu only made it 2 steps when a pair of long arms clamped around her waist. Jun Linyuan then pinned her down on the low table. Thud! They landed hard on the table. Both were infuriated, both glared at each other, and both were panting. Feng Wu glowered in exasperation, and her unblinking gaze reminded Jun Linyuan of a fierce she-tiger. Recalling how he had bullied and oppressed her, while she had no way to fight back, she grew all the more aggrieved and tears welled up in her eyes. But she only bit her lower lip stubbornly and went on glaring at Jun Linyuan. She refused to give in. Jun Linyuan's face was livid. However, when he saw the tears in Feng Wu's eyes, his anger gradually disappeared. It was replaced by an emotion that could be called pity. When Jun Linyuan's big hand landed on Feng Wu's head, her long eyelashes quivered. Chapter 533 The Broken Star Piece. Chapter 533 The Broken Star Piece. Did she think he was going to hit her? Jun Linyuan sighed in resignation, then pinched Feng Wu's smooth cheek. He used a little too much strength, which made Feng Wu grimace. So you do feel pain, the crown prince said coldly. Feng Wu was exasperated. None of your business. Jun Linyuan chuckled at those words. He gave Feng Wu's cheek a little squeeze, then said, Do you think you can just walk away after hitting me, the crown prince? You can't possibly be that naive. A few steps away, Feng and Granny Gong exchanged looks. His Royal Highness hadn't lost control after all. And Miss Wu was still alive after slapping His Royal Highness. However, she would still be punished, all right. Feng tipped Granny Gong the wink. Granny Gong smiled bitterly, then stepped out reluctantly. Your Royal Highness, the hot spring is ready. Shall we? The hot spring. Jun Linyuan shot a quick glance at Granny Gong, then nodded. Granny Gong was resolute when it came to ensuring that the servants carried out her orders, but she was still fearful of Jun Linyuan. After that, she gave Feng Wu a warning glance before she promptly left the scene. However, Feng Wu didn't understand what Granny Gong meant by that glance. Jun Linyuan snorted and stared at Feng Wu. You want to get into Imperial College? Despite her anger and grievances, Feng Wu nodded. Yes. And registration has closed. Yes. Mr. Liu wouldn't make an exception for you. Feng Wu looked up abruptly and glowered at Jun Linyuan. You know perfectly well why Mr. Liu didn't agree. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu arrogantly. That's right. I do. So he was blatantly bullying her. He couldn't even be bothered to pretend. Feng Wu took a deep breath to fight back her anger. Calm down, calm down. Sitting in a rattan chair on the other side, Jun Linyuan rubbed his chin absent-mindedly. You want to get into Imperial College? I can make that happen. Feng Wu stared at him and waited for him to play his hand. Jun Linyuan darted a casual glance at Feng Wu. Make me happy and I'll let you register. Feng Wu clenched her fists, took a deep breath and turned to leave. Make you happy, my ass. However, she had only taken 2 steps when she sensed a dense streak of spiritual essence. Turning around involuntarily, Feng Wu took one look and her eyes went bloodshot red. The broken star piece. On the table was an exquisite small box that Feng Wu had seen once before. It was none other than that wooden box that contained the broken star piece. However, the broken star piece was in Jun Linyuan's hand now. It was a thin piece that gave off a resplendent light. Dense spiritual essence was coming out of it, which made Feng Wu want to make a breakthrough. What are you doing? Seeing that Jun Linyuan was going to consume that piece, Feng Wu grabbed his wrist in a hurry. I'm going to consume it, said Jun Linyuan casually. Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan said, you're no longer applying for Imperial College, so the deal is off. Feng Wu bellowed, stop. Stop it. Only the broken star pieces could save her master, and she needed all 5 pieces. If Jun Linyuan consumed this one, then her beautiful master. Feng Wu was flustered by that thought. Why should I? Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Feng Wu and said carelessly, if I consume it, I'll be able to level up. Chapter 534 Feng Wu the Scrubbing Girl. Chapter 534. Feng Wu the Scrubbing Girl. Feng Wu was fuming. I couldn't care less about your cultivation level. If you harm my beautiful master in any way, I'm gonna kill you. Feng Wu took a deep breath, then another. Finally, she was able to suppress her anxiety. Crouching down, Feng Wu looked up at Jun Linyuan in an ingratiating manner. There was a wide grin on her beautiful face. Your Royal Highness, how can I be of service to you today? That was fast. Feng smacked his forehead. Satisfied, the Crown Prince rose to his feet and headed out of the yard. Feng Wu followed him out immediately. I'm doing this for my beautiful master. Feng Wu clenched her fists. The Crown Prince's residence befitted his status. In the busiest part of the city where property prices were exorbitantly high, this residence was so spacious that one could ride a horse around in it. They walked for about 5 minutes before Feng Wu started to feel a rise in the temperature. As if magma was rolling beneath the ground. A magnificent palace came into view. Jun Linyuan walked in straightaway and Feng Wu had to follow. Once inside, Feng Wu felt the hot air on her face. It's so hot here. Is this a subterranean heat? Is there magma beneath us? The fire spiritual energy inside Feng Wu was stirring and threatening to break free, and Feng Wu had to suppress it. Jun Linyuan darted a casual glance at her. Do you know what a dragon load is? Isn't that just a legend? Feng Wu looked at him eagerly. Jun Linyuan stood by the hot spring pool and held his arms straight out on both sides. Feng Wu hesitated. However, as soon as Jun Linyuan looked at her, she forced a smile, ran up to him immediately, and took off Jun Linyuan's robe off. She then hung it over an exquisite screen. The robe. The shirt. The vest. If she kept doing this, Jun Linyuan would be naked. Looking at his muscular chest, Feng Wu could hear the blood rushing into her head and her cheeks felt warm. Jun Linyuan had always had brooding eyes. Gazing at Feng Wu, his eyes were as deep as an abyss. Satisfied, Feng Wu took off his white undergarment, then pushed him from behind. The Crown Prince glanced at Feng Wu. What now? That look gave Feng Wu the creeps. Jun Linyuan said contemptuously, Are you sure you're going to wear all those layers in a hot place like this? Feng Wu put her arms over her chest and looked alarmed. I'm very sure. Jun Linyuan frowned. Feng Wu was on the alert. Hey, don't get any indecent ideas. I have my boundaries. I'll scrub your back and no more. The Crown Prince rolled his eyes. You're making things up in your head. Feng Wu snorted. I'm so pretty. No one can guarantee that you won't try anything. Jun Linyuan smirked. Prettier than me. Feng Wu was shocked. Jun Linyuan, I didn't know you had this side to you. Jun Linyuan realized what he had said and had to cough into his hand to cover up his embarrassment. Somehow, when Feng Wu was around, he couldn't help but show his true self. What he said wasn't like him at all. It was all because of this silly girl. Darting a glance at Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan beckoned her over. Come here. Feng Wu inched toward him. Let me make it very clear. I'll only scrub you and that's it. Jun Linyuan tossed her a clean bath towel. Get on with your job. Chapter 535 A Poolside Massage. Chapter 535 A Poolside Massage. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu, then beckoned her over the way one would summon a pet. Come here. In the enshrouding mist, his well-toned muscles reminded one of a fine marble sculpture. He was half submerged in the hot spring, and only his exquisite clavicle and long neck was exposed. The teenager spread his arms and rested them on the edge of the pool. His brooding eyes looked like bottomless pits, and there seemed to be an intrigued look in them. One had to admit that he had a very nice body that was fatally seductive. However, Feng Wu only snorted. My beautiful master would look even nicer without his clothes on. Get over here. Jun Linyuan waved at her like a big boss. Feng Wu wanted to refuse, but then she thought about that broken star piece. She had no choice but to bite her lower lip and slowly walk toward him. What? Feng Wu looked down at Jun Linyuan. The crown prince glanced at her arrogantly. What do you think? Feng Wu took a deep breath. You don't look very happy, Jun Linyuan said in a careless tone. This was all for the broken star piece. Feng Wu took another deep breath and squeezed out a smile. Of course I'm happy. It's my greatest honor to serve your royal highness. That pleased the crown prince and he let out an arrogant grunt. Let's just get it over with and get me registered. She had to prepare for the exam and so much more. At that thought, Feng Wu crouched down, scooped up some water, and poured it down Jun Linyuan's muscular back. Feng Wu was going to lather Jun Linyuan's back when... What? Feng Wu cried out in surprise. Jun Linyuan's fair back was covered in scars, some from whipping and others from blades. They crisscrossed all over his back, which made Feng Wu's mouth fall open. To her, Jun Linyuan had always been this golden boy that was the most superior figure in the empire. He was revered, well-loved, and the most bossy teenager she had ever met. But where had he gotten all these wounds? As a medicine refiner, Feng Wu could tell with one look that these were old scars that were probably left over from when Jun Linyuan had still been a child. What kind of childhood did he have? Do you know how to do it properly? Just when Feng Wu was feeling that Jun Linyuan was a little pitiful, the crown prince's arrogant voice rang out. Don't just sit around. Start scrubbing. Feng Wu was speechless. That tiny bit of tender feeling vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Not only was this overbearing teenager so unreasonable, he had also bullied her, exploited her, and humiliated her. Why should she feel pity for him? Did she suddenly get Stockholm Syndrome or something? Feng Wu flared up, but her beautiful master then came to mind. Calm down now. Her beautiful master would wake up and he would kick all those stupid asses for her. By then Jun Linyuan. Humph. She felt much better once she thought that. She then smiled at Jun Linyuan. Your Royal Highness, do you want a massage? Well, he should be pleased now. Jun Linyuan snorted. Whatever. He then added, I have no expectations of you. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. This guy just couldn't let a day pass without pissing her off. I'll show you what I can do. Feng Wu decided to impress him. Tossing the bath towel away, she began to add pressure to the acupoints on his shoulders. And she was an expert in that. As an excellent medicine refiner, Feng Wu wasn't boasting when she said that no one on this continent could find acupoints as accurately as she could. Chapter 536 Poolside. Chapter 536 Poolside. When Feng Wu's warm hands made contact with Jun Linyuan's skin, a shiver ran down his spine. The crown prince went as stiff as an iron bar. This was the first time anyone had touched him like this. Feng Wu's smooth hands moved around as if she was playing a piano. They landed on Jun Linyuan's shoulders and began to press down with gentle yet persistent pressure. Jun Linyuan had no idea that getting a massage could be this satisfying. Especially that pair of soft hands, which moved in such a way that the amount of pressure they used was perfect. He felt as if electricity was running through his veins, and he had never felt this content. Jun Linyuan slowly closed his eyes and heaved a sigh of satisfaction. Outside, Feng and Granny Gong stood there facing each other. Granny Gong looked concerned. Despite how calm Feng was, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She had to ask, "Is everything really okay in there?" Feng nodded. "Don't worry. But His Royal Highness is a neat freak who never touches women. He threw out all the concubine maids that the Empress arranged for him. His Royal Highness is still a virgin. Is he going to be all right?" Feng rolled his eyes. "You're worrying too much. Seriously." "No, I'm not." Granny Gong was bewildered. "His Royal Highness took Miss Wu into the hot spring himself. Isn't that obvious enough? I think we both know what's about to happen." Feng rolled his eyes again. Granny Gong really gave their young master too much credit. Just then they heard Jun Linyuan's voice from inside. "You move." Feng Wu said, "You're so hard. How am I supposed to move?" "That's exactly why you should." "Jun Linyuan, you're being completely unreasonable." "Who says I need to be reasonable with you? This is so exhausting. I'm done moving. Do it yourself. Let go of me. You started it. You're not going anywhere until it's done." "Oh." Feng's mouth fell open and Granny Gong reacted the same way. They exchanged shocked looks. Feng couldn't believe his ears. With how difficult and proud His Royal Highness was, how could he make such quick progress? This was unbelievable. Granny Gong grinned after the initial shock. She rubbed her hands together cheerfully. "This is great news. His Royal Highness is finally into girls. The Empress Dowager will burst into tears of joy if she hears about this." Jun Linyuan was the Empress Dowager's favorite grandson. To her, Jun Linyuan was better than the dozens of Emperor Wu's other sons put together. She doted on the crown prince. Granny Gong covered her mouth in excitement. "With how amazing His Royal Highness is, do you think he'll impregnate Miss Wu on the first go?" Feng was speechless. The more Granny Gong thought about it, the more elated she was. "If that happens, we'll have a little Royal Highness next year. Oh God, we're going to have a little prodigy in the Empire again. Although Miss Wu is just 14. Isn't that a bit too young?" Feng was speechless. In the hot spring, Feng Wu had no idea how the two outside had misinterpreted the situation. Right now, all she knew was that her hands were exhausted. Jun Linyuan's muscles were so tense, especially those on his back. They were hard to loosen up and Feng Wu had to knead very hard in order for her massage to take effect. "Jun Linyuan." Feng Wu smacked his back repeatedly. "Why are you so tense? Don't tell me that." Chapter 537 A Fight. In the Hot Spring. Chapter 537. A Fight. In the Hot Spring. Feng Wu smacked his taut shoulders. "Why are you so tense? Don't tell me that. You're nervous?" "Nervous?" The Crown Prince jumped to his feet and water splashed all over Feng Wu's face. "I'm nervous? Huh?" Jun Linyuan turned around and stared at Feng Wu. "Who on earth do you think you are? Some goddess from heaven? Why should I get nervous from your touch?" "Feng Wu, don't flatter yourself." Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. "I only wondered if your Royal Highness might be nervous because you think I might damage your energy channels. Why are you so jumpy?" Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. How embarrassing. His earlobes turned pink and he glared at Feng Wu. "Get back to work. You talk too much." All right. The poor girl went back to giving His Royal Highness a massage. Fortunately, with her rhythmic kneading, the muscles on Jun Linyuan's back gradually relaxed. But it was such an exhausting process. Whenever Feng Wu wanted to stop, the Crown Prince would snort through his nose. Which gave rise to the conversation that Granny Gong and Feng had heard just then. 15 minutes passed. Then an hour. 2 hours. Feng Wu thought that her hands were going to cramp up. She was massaging Jun Linyuan, an incredible cultivator, which was a completely different story from working on an ordinary person. To make the massage enjoyable for Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu needed much more control over the pressure her hands exerted. Much more. It challenged Feng Wu's massage technique greatly. After 4 hours, Feng Wu couldn't take it anymore. She sat down on the ground in exhaustion and wiped her sweaty forehead with a towel. Jun Linyuan had closed his eyes and his long eyelashes made 2 crescent shadows under them. His well-defined features reminded her of a masterly built sculpture, whose beauty was breathtaking. Seeing this, Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. Finally, she was free to go. She quietly rose to her feet and turned to leave on tiptoe. But she was only able to make it a few steps. "How dare you leave now?" A hand came out of nowhere. It grabbed Feng Wu's slim ankle and pulled. Crash. Feng Wu lost her balance and fell backward at the yank. Splash. Feng Wu fell backward into the hot spring, splashing water everywhere. She was submerged before she knew it. She kicked the bottom of the pool instinctively and began to paddle upward to the surface. Flustered, Feng Wu paid no attention to where her foot landed and she didn't realize what she had stepped on. Jun Linyuan's face turned livid at that kick and he drew in his breath. He glared at Feng Wu. No matter how excellent a cultivator he was as sensitive down there as every other man. Was this girl trying to make him impotent or something? Feng Wu had no idea what she had done. She quickly reached the edge of the pool and jumped out of the water in the next second. Turning around, she glared at Jun Linyuan. "What's wrong with you? Can't you use your words? Why is everything so physical with you? Can't you try to talk to me before moving into action? Why did you have to drag me in? I would have drowned if I didn't know how to swim." Feng Wu was still lashing out when she realized. Jun Linyuan's face was very dark. It was more than dark. He looked like he wanted to kill someone. Chapter 538. A little Jun Linyuan on its way? Chapter 538. A little Jun Linyuan on its way. Feng Wu was speechless. What was wrong? Why was Jun Linyuan's face so livid all of a sudden? And why that murderous look? Feng Wu's senses were as acute as a wild animal's. Once she realized the threat Jun Linyuan posed to her, she fell back, turned around and ran for the exit. She had to get out now, or she would have to face Jun Linyuan's wrath. Feng Wu ran as fast as she could. She reached the door in no time and grabbed the door handle. 1 second. That was all she needed. However, it was the longest second she had ever experienced. Whoosh! A streak of white light flashed through the air. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder and saw a long white curtain coming at her. "No!" Feng Wu cried out in surprise and tried her best to open the door. However, the curtain wrapped around her thin waist and Jun Linyuan pulled. The next moment, Feng Wu flew back toward Jun Linyuan like a swing. The white curtain was like an extension of Jun Linyuan's arm. It gently pulled Feng Wu back and slowly put her down in front of him. And it remained wrapped around Feng Wu, leaving her suspended over the pool. Right now, Feng Wu's hands and feet were all tied up and the curtain was wrapped around her from the neck down. "Where do you think you're going?" Jun Linyuan poked Feng Wu's cheek with a finger. Suspended in midair, Feng Wu was less than 10 centimeters away from Jun Linyuan. She thought she was going to explode. Did he think he could simply do such a thing to her? "What's wrong with you?" Feng Wu flared up. "Did I do anything to you?" "No, I haven't. Why are you doing this to me? I need an explanation." "You didn't do anything? Really?" "I swear on my life. I didn't do anything." Feng Wu felt so wronged and so aggrieved. Jun Linyuan threw her a sidelong glance and smirked. "You know perfectly well what you did. What on earth did I?" Feng Wu's gaze shifted downward and she saw Jun Linyuan's lower half. Her mouth fell open, her cheeks flushed, and her eyes darted around in a fluster. Face livid, the crown prince wanted to lash out but couldn't. All he could do was glare at Feng Wu. For a moment it was really awkward. Jun Linyuan rose to his feet, splashing water everywhere. The next second he dried himself off, and with a wave of his hand, his undergarments were as good as new. He then threw a robe over his shoulders and headed for the door. Hey! Feng Wu yelled behind him. Put me down. Put me down now. Jun Linyuan was such an oddball. He was capricious and unpredictable, and one had no idea how to respond to his behavior. He kept walking without looking back, but his finger moved a little. Splash! Feng Wu fell into the hot spring once more. And the door to the hot spring pool opened. Feng and Granny Gong, who had been talking, went back to their positions immediately and stood ramrod straight. Get her some clothes, the Crown Prince instructed Granny Gong when he walked past her. Granny Gong's eyes widened. She then looked at Feng. Feng was astonished. Granny Gong, on the other hand, was elated. Hear that? His Royal Highness told me to get Miss Wu some clothes. Do I have to tell you what happened in there? Ho, if we're lucky, we'll have a baby in the residence by next year. Right, I need to get those clothes for Miss Wu now. She then went off cheerfully and left Feng behind, who didn't look convinced. Had His Royal Highness really done it? Chapter 539 She and His Royal Highness. Chapter 539. She and His Royal Highness. Feng Wu had no idea about what was going on in Granny Gong's head. Nor did she know about Feng's suspicions. At that moment, her only thought was to strangle Jun Linyuan herself. How could he do this? He would tease her, make fun of her, or bully her whenever he felt like it. She was so frustrated. Just as Feng Wu was about to crawl out of the hot spring, she shuddered violently and the fire spiritual energy exploded inside her. Wait. Seriously? It felt like she would break through as soon as she lost her temper? That was incredible. There was no time to think. Feng Wu sat back down in the water. What she didn't know was that this hot spring had been created by using the essence of the magma extracted from underground, which was then infused with fire spiritual energy. The concept of a dragon lode was brought up when the Imperial city was established, and this hot spring sat right where the heart of that dragon was located. One could find the purest and most active fire spiritual energy here. Feng Wu had gotten one hell of a deal by coming here. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had no time to think. She sank to the bottom of the pool and sat there cross-legged. Soon fire spiritual energy flickered and danced around her, reminding one of little fairies. Time flew by. Feng Wu felt a satisfying sensation 5 minutes later, as if all her pores had opened up. She had broken through. She had been a level 3 spiritual grandmaster when she came here, and she was a level 4 now. Feng Wu was astonished after the breakthrough. She didn't know that was even possible. She recalled that she had broken through before right as Jun Linyuan pissed her off. She had been furious, but had nowhere to vent her anger. The next thing she knew, she had leveled up. And it had just happened again. She was mad at Jun Linyuan and she made a breakthrough. Feng Wu was speechless. Being pissed off by Jun Linyuan was a stimulus for her cultivation? What was the reasoning behind that? Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Whatever. She had pushed quite a significant amount of toxins out of her body during the breakthrough, so she took off all her clothes, down to her undergarments. She then quickly washed herself. Just then there was a knock at the door. Feng Wu covered her chest with her arms involuntarily. Couldn't be Jun Linyuan, could it? No, it couldn't be. That fiend would never knock before coming in. Feng Wu called out, "Who is it?" Granny Gong's kind, friendly voice rang out. "It's me. His Royal Highness left instructions and I'm here to bring you some clothes." Feng Wu was about to get some clothes out of her ring, but she stopped halfway. If she did that, she would expose the secret of her ring. "Come in." Granny Gong walked in to find Feng Wu submerged in the hot spring with only her head above the water. She looked at Granny Gong with her beautiful eyes. Only her head was above the water. Was she trying to hide the marks on her body? "Miss Wu, would you like to come out now? Let me help you get dressed." Feng Wu waved her hands immediately. "No, that won't be necessary. Granny Gong, please don't let me keep you. I'm fine by myself." "Then how about I get Xiao here to wait on you?" "No, I'm fine really." Feng Wu turned her down right away. Granny Gong took it as a sign of how shy Feng Wu was. At the thought of what had just happened between the girl and His Royal Highness, she smiled. "Of course. Miss Wu, please feel free to do whatever pleases you. I'm going to make some soup with that 10,000-year-old purple ginseng." Miss Wu, please enjoy the hot spring for as long as you want. It'll help you get over your fatigue. Take your time. There's no need to hurry. Chapter 540 Jun Linyuan made a breakthrough? Chapter 540 Jun Linyuan made a breakthrough. After that, Granny Gong left in a hurry, attentively closing the door behind her. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. As the chief maid of this residence, Granny Gong enjoyed quite a superior status. Even someone like Mrs. Yen would greet Granny Gong with respect. However, the granny was so nice to her. As a matter of fact, a little too nice. And what was that 10,000-year-old purple ginseng about? Feng Wu's heart skipped a bit. Had Granny Gong noticed that she had just had a breakthrough and was worn out? Was that why she wanted to restore her health with that 10,000-year-old purple ginseng? Had her secret been exposed? At that thought, Feng Wu couldn't sit still anymore. Rising to her feet, she quickly changed into the clean clothes which Granny Gong had brought her, then walked out in a hurry. Where's Granny Gong? Feng Wu walked out to find no one outside. In a pavilion a few steps away, Feng stood there ramrod straight with his hands behind his back. What was Feng doing there? All of a sudden, Feng Wu looked up at the sky. There wasn't a wisp of cloud in the sky when she looked, but 1 second later, black clouds gathered overhead and the light dimmed. The next moment, rumble! A bolt of lightning struck the pavilion Feng was standing in. With all the flashing lightning and rumbling thunder, Feng Wu was only able to make out the teenager sitting in the pavilion after a while. From behind, his straight, muscular back provided her with a sense of security. And he was fatally seductive at the same time. Rumble! A sudden clap of thunder exploded in the black clouds and a bolt of lightning struck like a sharp blade, aimed right at Jun Linyuan's head. It was such a frightening lightning tribulation. And more lightning kept striking down. There was a second lightning bolt, a third, and a fourth. They came down one after another without stopping. Feng Wu covered her mouth in astonishment. She had never seen such a terrifying lightning tribulation before. If it were her sitting there, she'd be in pieces by now. Would Jun Linyuan be able to handle it? It was a lightning tribulation after all. Just when Feng Wu was feeling concern for Jun Linyuan, to Feng Wu's surprise, Jun Linyuan stretched out his right arm with his palm facing upward. Rumble! The first bolt of lightning, the second, the third. Jun Linyuan caught all 9 lightning bolts with his hand. The lightning then turned into a ball, which emanated a terrifying energy. However, Jun Linyuan then squeezed. Thud! The ball was crushed in his palm. It was pulverized. Feng Wu's eyes opened wide. She couldn't believe that she had just witnessed a lightning tribulation. She had experienced a lightning tribulation herself before. At her level, she had already been pushing her limit to get through it. She couldn't imagine what Jun Linyuan's tribulation had to feel like. The first bolt of lightning burned everything within a 1-kilometer radius of the pavilion to the ground. However, Jun Linyuan wasn't affected at all. Once the lightning tribulation was over, the dark clouds scattered and the sky had never looked so clear and blue. Jun Linyuan had made a breakthrough. Right now, even his back had an indecipherable feel to it. The attraction was breathtaking and it was almost impossible for one to take their eyes off him. He was indeed the future ruler of the continent. The next moment, he jumped out of the pavilion and turned around. His unblinking gaze shifted to Feng Wu. His brooding eyes were so dark that no light seemed to be able to penetrate them. Walking toward her out of the ashes, he reminded her of a god. His robe flapped although there was no wind, and he had a majestic air to him. Finally, he stopped in front of her. Chapter 541 Feng Wu shoves Jun Linyuan in Vexation. Chapter 541. Feng Wu shoves Jun Linyuan in Vexation. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. His eyes reminded her of bright stars and bottomless pits at the same time. He kept his gaze on her and something flickered in his eyes. All of a sudden, he raised a hand and tried to touch Feng Wu's cheek with his slender fingers. Feng Wu stepped back involuntarily. Jun Linyuan frowned a little. An idea then struck Feng Wu and she beamed at him right away. Jun Linyuan, you've made a breakthrough. Are you happy now? Feng Wu would win the bet if he said yes. Feng Wu held her hands together in a praying gesture, but Jun Linyuan said in a cold voice, "No." Feng Wu bristled. "Why? You've leveled up." At Jun Linyuan's advanced level, breakthroughs were much more difficult to attain. Jun Linyuan glanced at her indifferently, put his hands behind his back, and said proudly, "What's there to be happy about? All my muscles are so sore." "Your muscles are sore?" Feng Wu thought she was going to explode. She had been so exhausted during the massage that she had wanted to stop several times. However, this guy had forced her to keep working by threatening her with that broken star piece. At that thought, Feng Wu's stomach lurched. The broken star piece. Had Jun Linyuan made a breakthrough because he had consumed that broken star piece? Feng Wu lost control. She rushed to Jun Linyuan's side, grabbed him and began to feel up his chest. Jun Linyuan was flabbergasted. Granny Gong, who had just arrived with some 10,000-year-old purple ginseng soup, watched this with an open mouth. Were they that eager? Jun Linyuan took Feng Wu by her wrist and stared at her. "Are you really that eager?" Granny Gong was speechless. So she had guessed right. Feng Wu said, "Let go of my hand. Where's my broken star piece? Did you consume it? You did, didn't you?" So she was only after the broken star piece. Jun Linyuan's face darkened and he looked pissed. Feng Wu was only anxious before, but now she panicked. It was her broken star piece. Her only way to save her beautiful master. No one in this world was more important to her than her beautiful master. Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan in exasperation. "Jun Linyuan, you liar. Didn't you promise that you would give me that broken star piece? How could you use it yourself? You're unbelievable. I was so wrong about you." The Crown Prince's face was darker than a stormy night. He glowered at Feng Wu, but Feng Wu didn't even flinch. Now that the broken star piece was gone, she had no reason to be threatened. She shoved Jun Linyuan in frustration and Jun Linyuan stumbled back. "Speak. Say something. Guilty conscience, is it? I never thought you could do this. You broke your promise in order to help your own cultivation." Tears welled up in Feng Wu's eyes. Her beautiful master. She owed him so much and she had lost her only chance to save him. She was full of despair. Over on the other side, Granny Gong and Feng were terrified. With their Crown Prince's temperament, they wouldn't be surprised if he ended up killing Miss Wu. What should they do? Granny Gong was worried sick. Feng was the more experienced one and he waved his hand. "Let's wait and see." But for what? Granny Gong was so scared of what might happen to Feng Wu. His Royal Highness was such a proud and aloof guy that he would never let anyone wrong him like that. He had killed for even less. But because it was Feng Wu, his only reaction was to storm off. Chapter 542 Brother Jun. Chapter 542 Brother Jun. However, as soon as he turned around, he saw Feng Wu's teary eyes and the aggrieved look on her face. One couldn't help but feel pity for the angry and upset girl. But that didn't stop Jun Linyuan from getting mad. Staring at her, the Crown Prince asked in a husky, frustrated voice, "Does that broken star piece really mean that much to you?" Feng Wu glared back at him. "Of course. It's more important than my own life." "More important than mine?" Jun Linyuan gritted his teeth. "Are you saying your life is more important than mine?" Feng Wu snapped. The proud Crown Prince drew in his breath. Feng looked up at the sky, not knowing what to say. "Your Royal Highness, you've made your bed. Now you must lie in it." Breathing hard, Jun Linyuan glowered at Feng Wu. "You." "I what? You want to hit me? Do it. Just do it. Without the broken star piece, I don't want to live anymore. Kill me. Now." Feng Wu moved closer and took Jun Linyuan's hand. But then Jun Linyuan opened his palm. In the center of his palm lay that broken star piece. Feng Wu was about to lash out again when she spotted the broken star piece. She stopped crying instantly and cried out in surprise. "Ah! My broken star piece. My broken star piece. It's still here. Ah!" Feng Wu hopped around in excitement and tugged at Jun Linyuan's sleeve. "My broken star piece is still here. My broken star piece. Mine." She was happy now. Where was that shrew from a minute ago? The crown prince threw a dirty look at the girl. Which is more important, your life or the broken star piece? Feng Wu's heart sank. She finally realized what she had said. Holy shit. She felt like hitting herself on the head. How could she? Looking up, she saw the smirk on Jun Linyuan's face and she was speechless. Then Jun Linyuan put away the broken star piece, flipped his sleeves and was ready to leave. No no no. Feng Wu ran after him right away. Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan ignored her. This wasn't happening. Feng Wu was almost in tears. It was so obvious that Jun Linyuan was mad. The crown prince here was the most unforgiving person in the world, and he was very vindictive. Feng Wu ran even faster. She caught up with Jun Linyuan and grabbed his wide sleeve. Your Royal Highness, my dear crown prince, please don't go. Brother Jun. The teenager only stopped after much pulling and dragging on Feng Wu's part. Brother Jun, Feng Wu blocked his way. The proud crown prince turned his head to the left. Brother Jun. The crown prince turned the other way, his face still expressionless. Brother Jun, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Feng Wu put on an aggrieved look and pouted. She was a beautiful girl to begin with. Her long dense eyelashes were like two little fans and they were still wet with her tears. When she lowered her gaze, the glistening eyelashes reminded one of dewdrops at dawn, which could bring out all of the pity in a person. Jun Linyuan had to fight the urge to wipe her tears away for her. He clenched his fists behind his back, maintained an arrogant expression, gritted his teeth and stared at her coldly. Feng Wu saw that he was still mad, so she swayed his arm back and forth and said in a pitiful voice, "It was all my fault. I'm sorry. I really am." The fate of her broken star piece was still in his hands, as well as whether or not she could take that exam. She had to succumb to his power. Jun Linyuan glared at her, then snorted. You're sorry? About what? Chapter 543 My dear brother Jun. Chapter 543 My dear brother Jun. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Feng Wu bit her lower lip, darted a quick glance at him, then lowered her head again. Jun Linyuan smirked. That's it. I shouldn't have accused you of not keeping your promise. Humph. I shouldn't have called you a liar. Heh. Feng Wu twisted her sleeve between her fingers. I shouldn't have. Without knowing it, Jun Linyuan's heart had already begun to soften when he looked at the girl's sad face. However, his tone remained just as stiff. Which is more important to you, your life or the broken star piece? Of course the bee. Feng Wu saw Jun Linyuan frown as soon as she blurted out her reply, and she changed it right away. My life. Of course my life is more important. Feng Wu even made a fist to go with the answer. Jun Linyuan glanced down at her. Then what? Feng Wu was dumbfounded. However, judging by the look in Jun Linyuan's eyes, she was expected to say something. Jun Linyuan threw off Feng Wu's hand and went on walking. She couldn't let him go now. Running after him in exasperation, Feng Wu caught Jun Linyuan's sleeve. Then your life is more important than the broken star piece. That was what she was supposed to say, right? Jun Linyuan's gaze remained blank. Flustered, Feng Wu cried out, Jun Linyuan, your life is more important than mine. This was it, right? She had said the right thing, hadn't she? Feng Wu rested her chin on her fists and blinked her shiny eyes, eager to hear the verdict. Jun Linyuan snorted and looked less pissed. Feng and Granny Gong exchanged looks and both gave the crown prince a thumbs up in their heads. Your Royal Highness. Awesome. Feng Wu had no idea what those words she had impulsively cried out meant to Jun Linyuan. She only watched him expectantly and was very excited. Her fair skin was flawless and she was so slim that it seemed she could barely hold up the weight of her clothes. She looked so attractive this way. The thick layer of ice wrapped around Jun Linyuan's heart cracked at that moment. Unfortunately, he didn't know it himself. He coughed into his fist to ease the awkwardness. Was she right? Was she? Feng Wu looked at him eagerly and tugged at his sleeve without realizing it. Humph, Jun Linyuan grunted. Feng Wu acted like a little sycophant. Still holding Jun Linyuan's sleeve, she asked, Brother Jun, You made a breakthrough without consuming the broken star piece. It had something to do with what I did, right? Read latest chapters at Novelful. How does it have anything to do with you? Jun Linyuan darted her a glance. It has everything to do with me. Feng Wu snapped. Look, does a breakthrough happen to you every day? No, right? So, it happened today because I gave you a massage, opened up your energy channels and relaxed your muscles. And voila! You leveled up. Am I right? Jun Linyuan raised his chin proudly and looked up at the sky. Well. Feng Wu pouted, then said quietly, was that not the case? Have I really done nothing to help? She then lowered her head, looking crestfallen. Her long eyelashes quivered and she wrung the lower hem of her clothes. She looked so adorable that it reminded him of a spiritual pet. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. He then patted her head and said impatiently, fine. You did help a little. Really? Feng Wu's beautiful eyes sparkled and she stared at Jun Linyuan in excitement. Really? Really? I really helped you. Chapter 544 The Broken Star Piece. Chapter 544 The Broken Star Piece. Jun Linyuan threw a contemptuous glance at her. Why was she so happy? It was a tiny compliment. Holding Jun Linyuan's arm, Feng Wu hopped around. Since I helped you so much, can you give me that broken star piece? Please. There were stars in the girl's eyes. But Jun Linyuan only gave her a knowing look. She might be fawning on him now, but once he gave her that broken star piece, she would forget all about him and run away as fast as she could. Jun Linyuan knew that side of her too well. No. But why? Feng Wu pouted. Because I said so. Then what about Imperial College? Feng Wu eyed him eagerly. Jun Linyuan pondered. Please put in a good word for me with Mr. Liu, won't you? He wouldn't listen to me no matter what I said, and it was so humiliating. Brother Jun, Feng Wu wriggled around. Stand still and stop squirming. Jun Linyuan scolded her. All right. Feng Wu drew out the word. Fine. Jun Linyuan said with a stern face and waved his hand impatiently. There can be an extra candidate for the exam. Feng. After standing in the background for so long, Feng was finally put to use again. Feng nodded, then left the courtyard. He returned shortly afterward, handing Feng Wu an envelope with Jun Linyuan's personal seal on it. Miss Wu, please put this away carefully. You'll be able to exchange this letter for an exam permit. Feng Wu put the envelope in her chest pocket right away, fearing that Jun Linyuan might take it away again. Jun Linyuan's face darkened. Why did he have the feeling that she liked that letter better than him? Once the exam permit was secured, Feng Wu had nothing to ask from Jun Linyuan for the time being. She was back to her proud self again. She gave a wave of her hand and was ready to leave. Granny Gong went up to her in a hurry. Miss Wu, please have this 10,000-year-old purple ginseng soup while it's still warm. It's a great tonic for your body. Granny Gong smiled kindly at Feng Wu. Feng Wu wanted to turn it down, but she had made several breakthroughs in a short period of time and she did indeed feel like she was lacking some energy. But why was Granny Gong offering her a tonic? Could it be that Granny Gong had found out about her cultivation? Feng Wu's stomach lurched. She looked at Granny Gong and asked tentatively, but why? Miss Wu, you worked really hard back there and you need something nutritious. Now drink this. It won't be as effective when it's cold. This works wonders, Granny Gong said cheerfully. Of course Feng Wu knew how wonderful it was. But I didn't work hard. It's not like I actually did anything. Feng Wu tried to explain. Granny Gong said immediately, yes. Yes, of course. I apologize for His Royal Highness. Miss Wu, you're way too young to go through that. Now please drink this purple ginseng soup. All right. Feng Wu nodded. It seemed that Granny Gong knew how Jun Linyuan had bullied her, and this purple ginseng had been made for her as an apology. Why let it go to waste? At that thought, Feng Wu drained the bowl in one go. Jun Linyuan glanced at Granny Gong in silence. Feng Wu then took the letter to Imperial College. This was the second time today that Mr. Liu took an envelope from Feng Wu. The first one was from Old Man Ba, his old friend, and that letter had stirred him. And this second time, Seeing that Feng Wu had come back, Mr. Lu felt sorry for her and gave her a wry smile. Chapter 545 The Exam Permit. Chapter 545 The Exam Permit. You came back empty-handed, didn't you? It's understandable. The door to that residence isn't open to everyone. After all, given Feng Wu's status and capability, it was impossible for her to get through that gate. However, Feng Wu only took a letter from her chest pocket and carefully put it down on the table. Mr. Lu frowned when he saw the envelope. Was this girl trying to bribe him now? He picked up the envelope, took out the letter and shook it open. It consisted of one line only, but there was a scarlet seal at the bottom of the letter. Mr. Lu gave the right bottom corner a casual glance. His eyes opened wide the next second. This letter was from the Crown Prince's residence. Mr. Lu raised his head abruptly and looked at Feng Wu in disbelief. He didn't come back to himself for quite a while. After some time, he said in an affirmative tone, "This is the seal of the Crown Prince's residence." Feng Wu nodded indifferently. "How did you get this letter?" "You." Mr. Lu couldn't believe his eyes. Feng Wu recalled the things she had to do for Jun Linyuan back in the residence, and she didn't know where to begin. She only said casually, "Will this letter do?" "Yes, of course." The seal had to be authentic, and so was Mr. Feng's handwriting. Moreover, no one would dare fake a letter from the Crown Prince's residence. If they were found out, they would wish for the death penalty. Mr. Lu just found it difficult to understand. His Royal Highness's man had come here to stop Feng Wu from getting the permit, but His Royal Highness had written a letter to recommend her now. What was that about? Mr. Lu asked Feng Wu tentatively. "Are you and His Royal Highness very close?" "Close?" Feng Wu snorted. "Mr. Lu, what do you think?" Mr. Lu shook his head and decided that he was thinking too much. How could these two people be close? He nodded and wrote Feng Wu a recommendation letter. With 3 such letters, a cultivator below level 9 could take part in the entrance exam for Imperial College. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. "Oh damn." Mr. Lu looked at her in bewilderment. Feng Wu said, "I forgot to mention that a friend of mine is taking the exam as well." Mr. Lu frowned. "Another one? And what level is she?" "She's a level 7 spiritual master." Mr. Lu shook his head. "Are the two of you serious? You have no spiritual essence and she's a level 7. How are you going to get in at all?" However, since Feng Wu had been given permission, an extra candidate wouldn't make much of a difference, and Mr. Lu didn't plan to make it more difficult for Feng Wu. After all, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu had both mentioned Duan Chaoga in their letters. Once his letter was finished, Mr. Lu handed all the letters to Feng Wu. "Off you go. You can get your exam permit at the assessment office." Mr. Lu even sent his young servant along with Feng Wu to show her the way. The assessment office was awfully quiet at the moment, for registration was over. "We have quite a few good candidates this year," said a pretty blonde and blue-eyed female teacher as she flipped through the forms. She nodded appreciatively. "Princess Mu is taking the exam. This Ning Chenxi also looks really promising." And knock knock knock. Someone was tapping on the door. Who can that be? At this hour? About half a dozen teachers were in the office and everyone turned to the door in bewilderment. The door opened. Feng Wu walked in and everyone was astonished by her stunning beauty. All teachers, male and female, stared at her with open mouths. "Young lady you are?" An affable elderly female teacher rose to her feet and went up to Feng Wu with a smile. "Such a pretty girl. How wonderful." Chapter 546. What makes you think you can get it? Chapter 546. What makes you think you can get it? Feng Wu liked this teacher and gave her a nod. "I'm here to register for Imperial College's entrance exam." Registration. The pretty blonde and blue-eyed teacher was the first to react. She rose to her feet, went up to Feng Wu, and looked her up and down. She only asked with a frown after a long moment, "Who are you helping to register?" She asked this because she couldn't detect any spiritual essence in Feng Wu. "Myself," Feng Wu said calmly. The blonde teacher was called Xiao, and she considered herself a beauty and was well known in Imperial College for her good looks. However, she couldn't help but feel ashamed of her own unseemliness when she saw Feng Wu. Ergo, she didn't like Feng Wu. People could be strange this way. They didn't really need a reason to find another person unlikable. Yourself? You've got to be kidding me. Xiao stared at Feng Wu with wide-open eyes. How? You don't have any spiritual essence at all. That was because Feng Wu had hidden her spiritual essence with her concealing jade. Thanks to the imprint which her beautiful master had left on the jade, only those with a more advanced cultivation level than him could detect Feng Wu's level. The elderly teacher was called Yu, and she looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Kiddo, I need to let you know that you have to be a level 9 spiritual master, at least to register for our entrance exam. How about you come back when you're a little older? Yu acted like a kind auntie and spoke to Feng Wu in a soft voice, so as not to hurt the girl's feelings. Xiao glanced at Yu then smirked. Ms. Yu, the girl is useless in cultivation. It won't change no matter how many more years you give her. Why give her false hope? After those words, Xiao threw a dirty at Feng Wu. You don't leave things to luck. Just admit the fact that you're a good for nothing. Off you go. The office is closed. Feng Wu didn't seem to be offended by Xiao Yi's animosity at all. She only smiled. Well, there are always exceptions. Of course. Xiao Yi smirked. The rules of Imperial College stipulate that with recommendation letters from 3 different members of the Education Board, even some useless person with 0 spiritual essence can get an exam permit. But you. She glanced at Feng Wu contemptuously. How is an insignificant girl like you supposed to get those letters? That was never going to happen. Even you didn't think that was possible, not to mention Xiao Yi. The other teachers in the room also smiled or smirked at Feng Wu. Are those letters that hard to get? With her hands behind her back, Feng Wu asked casually. Xiao Yi felt like she was talking to an idiot. Are they hard to get? It's impossible to get them. Do you know what the Education Board is like? There are only 7 members in total. Every single one of them is at the top of their field, and they're all influential figures in the empire. I'll give you an example. Have you heard of Grand Secretary Feng? He's a member of the Education Board, the Chancellor of the Empire, and a first-ranked official. Given his superiority, whom do you think he'll write a recommendation letter for? Feng Wu didn't say anything. Xiao Yi snorted. I'll give you another example. Do you know who Mr. Liu is? Well, he's the boss of my boss's boss. You can't even get through me, so how are you going to get a letter from him? Do you think that's possible? Chapter 547, that's it. Chapter 547, that's it. Xiao Yi thought the girl would run away in shame after those words. After all, girls her age had very high self-esteem and didn't take criticism well. To Xiao Yi's surprise, the girl not only didn't run away, she didn't even blush. Feng Wu just stood there, perfectly composed, and looked at Xiao Yi with her bright, limpid eyes. There was something very attractive about her. She was already this stunning at such a young age. What would she be like when she grew up? Xiao Yi almost lost control of her jealousy. Yu was much kinder and she cast a stern glance at Xiao Yi. Watch your attitude. We teachers should provide education for all people without discrimination. She's just a girl. You'll scare her. Feng Wu had left a good impression on Yu. The latter took a liking to Feng Wu and was afraid that Xiao Yi might have intimidated the girl. However, Feng Wu only handed her 3 letters. What are these? Yu was bewildered. Don't tell me you're going to bribe us now. Xiao Yi gave Feng Wu a contemptuous look. Kiddo, it'll never work in Imperial College. I'd take that bribe back if I were you. If you get reported for this. However, Yu had opened the letters already. The first one was from Priest Wu, and he had recommended both Feng Wu and Xiaoga. Yu looked at Feng Wu and her eyelids twitched a little. Feng Wu, age 13. It can't be, can it? Yu took Feng Wu's hand in excitement. You're Feng Wu. The Feng Wu. Which Feng Wu? The other teachers found that name familiar, but didn't recognize it right away. Which one do you think? How many Feng Wus can you find in the imperial capital? Yu was thrilled. She's the genius girl from the Feng clan. Feng Wu, the genius girl. All the teachers of Imperial College had heard of that name. For even Mr. Liu had wanted Feng Wu as a student when she was only 8. But now, your spiritual essence, Yu felt sorry for Feng Wu. Everyone knew that Feng Wu had lost her ability. Feng Wu only smiled, but she neither admitted nor denied their assumptions. Xiao frowned. That's past history. She has no spiritual essence whatsoever. Having her here is a waste of our resources. Yu darted a glance at her. The letter is from Old Master Wu. She then opened the second letter and her pupils contracted. This is from Grand Secretary Feng? What? Xiao, who had been frowning, rushed up to Yu, grabbed the recommendation letter and read it carefully. It really was from Grand Secretary Feng. How was that even possible? Wasn't the girl a good-for-nothing now? How could she get recommendations from both Old Master Wu and Grand Secretary Feng? And there's a third one. An idea struck Yu and she opened the letter. It's from Mr. Liu himself. Xiao Yi's eyes opened so wide that her eyeballs bulged out. That's impossible. How did you get them? Feng Wu frowned. Do I have to tell you? Yes. Or we won't be able to verify the authenticity of the letters. Xiao Yi stared at Feng Wu. All right. Feng Wu shrugged. I know someone who knows Mr. Liu. Both Old Man Ba and Jun Linyuan were Mr. Liu's acquaintances, weren't they? Feng Wu thought that was a legitimate answer. However, Chapter 548 Face-slapping. Chapter 548 Face-slapping. Xiao Yi looked enlightened. That was it. The girl had pulled some strings. As for Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu, they must have written her the recommendation letters upon Mr. Liu's request. She would never be able to get in, and they were only doing Mr. Liu a favor. It wasn't something that hadn't happened before. At that thought, Xiao Yi darted a contemptuous look at Feng Wu. However, Yu remained as friendly as ever, for she liked this beautiful girl, who had kept her composure the entire time. Looking at Feng Wu, she said sincerely, Miss Feng Wu, have you considered the formation or medicine department instead? The martial arts department is probably not the most suitable choice for you. Ms. Yu, you're being too vague. You should just tell her that the martial arts department isn't for her at all. She'll never be able to get in, and even if she did miraculously get in, she'll be miserable there. Xiao Yi smirked. Of course Feng Wu would have chosen the easy way and gotten into the formation department, if Jun Linyuan hadn't forced her to get into the martial arts department. She had no choice. Plus, the deadline has passed. What you want is kind of difficult to get. Xiao Yi didn't want to make it easy for Feng Wu. I see. So the 3 recommendation letters mean nothing to you. Feng Wu only smiled. Xiao Yi shuddered at those words. Mr. Liu's words were as sacred as law here, and Xiao Yi certainly didn't dare defy them. She had some personal issues with Feng Wu, but she wasn't stupid. Miss, do you want to have a look at the timestamp on those letters? Feng Wu reminded her. Xiao Yi then checked the time, which rendered her speechless, for the letters had been written before the deadline. Xiao Yi threw a dirty look at Feng Wu. She had no other choice but to give Feng Wu her exam permit. She was going to give Feng Wu a hard time over Chaoga's exam permit again, but Yu stopped her. The Feng clan. Chaoga was waiting for Feng Wu. Sigh. Chaoga sat at the table and heaved a sigh. She then turned to Feng Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi, it was so frustrating. We almost had all 3 letters, but His Royal Highness sabotaged it all. I'm so mad. All Feng Xiaoqi cared about was his sister, and guys like His Royal Highness or Yuminji were as good as thieves to him. He smacked the table at Chaoga's words. Chaoga looked at him in bewilderment. That's right. Feng Xiaoqi looked agitated. His Royal Highness is the worst. All he ever does is pick on my sister. That's so true. Duan. Chaoga smacked the table as well. He doesn't just pick on her, he threatens her all the time. He's horrible. Knowing that man is the worst thing that has ever happened to your sister. Up in that leafy Chinese parasol tree outside the house, Chong San had sent one of his men to shadow Feng Wu, for he had realized how much His Royal Highness cared for the young lady. If that was the case, His Royal Highness must want to know what was going on with Miss Fengwu, right? His man was known as Zero. Zero was a member of the Imperial Guards. He had just gotten here and sat down on a branch. He then heard the two kids, who had been sighing at each other, begin to smack the table one after another. And the things they said. It was treacherous. Zero felt like crying. To him, His Royal Highness was as superior and unapproachable as God. But those two lousy kids were saying such nasty things about his master. Chapter 549 We Can Celebrate for 15 Minutes. Chapter 549 We Can Celebrate for 15 Minutes. They were blatantly insulting His Royal Highness. That was just outrageous. Zero thought that those two down there had to have a death wish. Just then he heard approaching footsteps and a teenage girl came in with nimble movements. Xiao Wu. Xiaoga rushed over to Feng Wu when she saw the latter. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi also dashed at Feng Wu like a cannonball. Xiaoga immediately tried to console Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, we're not applying for Imperial College. Feng Xiaoqi chimed in, that's right. We don't need it. Xiaoga said, Imperial College isn't that good anyway. We'll do better cultivating on our own. Feng Xiaoqi nodded repeatedly. That's right. Sister, you're a much better teacher than any of them. Xiaoga said, so Xiao Wu, don't be upset. It's not that we can't take the exam, we just don't want to. Feng Xiaoqi echoed, that's right. We don't like that place at all. Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she was very touched. These two kids must have thought that she hadn't gotten the exam permit, and thus wouldn't be able to take the exam. That was why they were saying that the exam wasn't worthwhile. It was such a heartwarming move, and Feng Wu swore to herself that she would keep these two kids safe forever. With a wave of Feng Wu's hands, she flicked both of them in their foreheads. Check this out. Feng Wu tossed them two booklets. Xiaoga caught one red booklet, read the cover and cried out in surprise. The exam permit. She opened it in a hurry and saw that her personal information was recorded in it together with the exam times. Wow! Xiaoga almost jumped to her feet and her eyes shone in excitement. Xiao Wu, is this mine? I can take Imperial College's entrance exam? I'm only a level 7. I really can take the exam? Of course. I told you I would make it happen. Feng Wu beamed at her. Wow! Xiao Wu, you're amazing. This is amazing. Xiaoga threw her arms around Feng Wu and kissed the latter on the cheek. I can't believe this. You're incredible. What was more amazing was that after the stunt that the abominable crown prince had pulled, Feng Wu had still been able to get what she wanted. Xiao Wu was a goddess. Up in the parasol tree, Zero held a notebook in one hand and quickly made a sketch with a charcoal crayon. He didn't have time to sketch the scene where Feng Xiaoqi and Xiaoga had been talking about His Royal Highness behind his back, but was just in time to note down Feng Wu's satisfied smile. Feng Wu patted Xiaoga on the shoulder. Well, we can have 15 minutes to celebrate, and we just did. Now it's time to get down to business. Business? Xiaoga looked puzzled. Feng Wu jabbed Xiaoga's head with a finger. You have the permit, but can you pass the exam? Ah! Xiaoga cried out. She had forgotten about the most important part. Imperial College's entrance exam was known as the national exam. Across the empire, the most talented teenagers under 18 would gather in the imperial capital every year to take the exam. It was as competitive as 10,000 people squeezing onto a single log bridge. Xiaoga was flustered. She knew she wouldn't do well in the physical tryout, for she was only a level 7, and she wouldn't be able to defeat anyone. As for the written exam, she would probably do even worse. Sobbed Xiao Wu. Xiaoga turned to Feng Wu for help. What was she supposed to do now? Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. We still have 7 days. Don't panic. Now, go back home and tell them that you'll be staying at my place for the next 7 days. Chapter 550 The Duan Family. Chapter 550 The Duan Family. In this situation, their only choice was to take a crash course. No problem. Xiao Wu, I'll be right back. Xiaoga rushed out the door in a hurry. and she ran all the way back home. The Duan family was a middle-class family. Thanks to the contributions of previous generations, Duan Hongyi, Duan Chaoga's father, was able to get a position as a fourth-ranked official. Chaoga was the daughter of a concubine and her mother had long passed away. In this family, she had always been an easy target mocked by everyone. She had done all right as Feng Wu's friend back when Feng Wu was still the little genius. But then, Feng Wu lost her ability, and because of the poison, Chaoga gained weight and her cultivation level dropped, which led to status declining sharply in the family. Her big brothers and sisters would pick on her all the time. Especially her two elder sisters Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue, who enjoyed nothing more than laughing at Chaoga. Duan Chaoga went back to her room and packed up a few things. She then left a note before heading out. After all, it made no difference to other people in this family whether she was around or not. No one would notice her even if she didn't show up for a week. As for the servants who worked in her courtyard, well, there was only one maid, who was really an informant of her father's wife. There was no need to tell that maid anything. However, it just so happened that Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyin were walking past the gate when Chaoga stepped out. Duan Chaoyin was the eldest daughter of the family, Duan Chaoyue the second, and Duan Chaoga the third. However, only Chaoga was the daughter of a concubine, whereas the other two were daughters of Duan Hongyi's wife. Duan Chaoyue had sharper eyes and she spotted Chaoga right away. "Chaoga, where are you going?" Duan Chaoyin turned around and saw Chaoga with her traveling bag. She frowned and blocked Chaoga's way. "Out of my way." Chaoga frowned. Duan Chaoyin was displeased. "Are you running away from home now? Why do you even care?" Duan Chaoyin snorted. "I couldn't care less where you're going, but I do care when you steal our things." Duan Chaoga glared at her. "There's nothing worth stealing in my courtyard. Even if there is, you've taken it away already." "Not necessarily. What if you've stolen from our vault?" Duan Chaoyin deliberately tried to enrage Chaoga. "Show me what's in your bag and we'll let you go." Duan Chaoyin said those words on purpose, for she knew that Chaoga was easily set off. As expected, Chaoga's cheeks flushed immediately and her eyes went bloodshot red like an infuriated jaguar. "Do I have to take off my clothes and let you frisk me after you check my bag?" Chaoga smirked. "Why, I see you've learned your lesson. You know the drill well." "You people are outrageous." "Yes, we are. What are you going to do about it? Can you fight us? Can you win?" Duan Chaoyin snorted and stared at Chaoga. "Duan Chaoga, you think too highly of yourself." Chaoga had reached level 9 5 years ago, which proved that she was very talented herself. However, her cultivation level had only declined in the past few years, whereas Duan Chaoyin had surpassed her. "You know what? I'm a level 9 spiritual master already. Hahaha." Duan Chaoyin, who used to be inferior in her cultivation level, was very satisfied with herself now. "I went to apply for Imperial College today, and I'm sure I'll get into the martial arts department this year. I'll become an honorable student of Imperial College, whereas you..." Chapter 551 Hahaha. Chapter 551. Ha. Duan Chaoga had been wondering what her sister was going to show off, and she snorted when she heard Duan Chaoyin's announcement. "So what if you're taking the entrance exam for Imperial College?" "So what?" Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue exchanged looks and both saw ridicule in each other's eyes. "Did you think that you can become a student of Imperial College just by applying? Of all the candidates in the Empire, only 10,000 people can take the written exam. The top 1,000 can go on to the physical tryout, and only the top 100 from the physical tryout will be admitted. Do you have any idea how hard it is to register for the exam? However, both of your two elder sisters here successfully registered." Duan Chaoyin gave Chaoga a sidelong glance. "Do you think that's an easy thing to do?" Chaoga rolled her eyes. "That's it? You got registered for Imperial College's exam? So did I. Big deal." Hahaha. Ouch, my belly aches. Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue laughed until their stomachs ached. Especially Duan Chaoyin, who laughed so hard that she had to gasp for air. "Hahaha, Duan Chaoga, I didn't know you could be so brazen. I never knew you had this side to you. You registered as well? Ouch, my belly." I'm cracking up here. Duan Xiaoyue, the more aloof one who didn't talk much, couldn't help but smirk. Xiaoga, did you forget the part of the rules where only a level 9 spiritual master or above can take the exam? Xiaoga rolled her eyes. Of course I didn't. Then stop bragging. Are you hearing yourself? Duan Xiaoyin snorted. Xiaoga threw them a dirty look. That's the only way you know of to register for the exam? You people are so ignorant. Duan Xiaoyin racked her brain in order to prove that she wasn't ignorant. She then remembered the exemption, which was rarely used. The 3 recommendation letters from 3 members of the education board? Is that what you're talking about? Duan Xiaoyue and Duan Xiaoyin exchanged looks. Yep. Xiaoga grinned. Hahaha. Duan Xiaoyin and Duan Xiaoyue burst out laughing again, even louder than before. My tears are coming out. Since when was Duan Xiaoga so funny? Can you believe what she just said? She has such a wild imagination. Does she take us for a pair of fools? I'm telling the truth. Xiaoga snapped. It's true. The 3 members are Mr. Liu, Grand Secretary Feng, and Old Master Wu. They wrote those recommendation letters for me. Hahaha. Hearing those words, Duan Xiaoyin and Duan Xiaoyue, who had finally stopped laughing, guffawed again. This is hilarious. Gosh, I'm in tears. Duan Xiaoyin wiped away her tears. I won't even begin to talk about Mr. Liu and Grand Secretary Feng. Old Master Wu himself is a well-known formation grandmaster in our empire. You can't even get close to him. Who are you kidding? I can't, but Xiao Wu can. Xiaoga gloated. Xiao Wu had the 3 bosses write the letters for us. Xiao Wu? Which Xiao Wu? You mean Feng Wu? The one you used to follow everywhere? Yes. Xiaoga was very confident every time Feng Wu was mentioned. Xiao Wu is the best. Not only did she persuade Old Master Wu and Grand Secretary Feng, she even got help from Mr. Liu as well. Oh right, and there was His Royal Highness. He put in a good word for us too. Hahaha. Chapter 552. Can you be any more delusional? Chapter 552. Can you be any more delusional? Hearing those words, Duan Xiaoyin and Duan Xiaoyin burst into laughter again. If what Xiaoga said before was remotely possible, the thing she had just said was pure delusion. Have you caught a cold or something? Are you hearing yourself? Are you daydreaming? Duan Xiaoyin stared at Xiaoga. Xiaoga lost her temper. There's nothing wrong with my head and I've told you nothing but the truth. Let lightning strike me if I'm lying. Wow, you're taking an oath? That's just lame, Duan Xiaoga. Duan Xiaoyin snorted. I'm telling the truth. Xiaoga was furious. Upright as she was, she hated it when she was wronged. She was eager to prove herself. I have the exam permit. Xiaoga cried out. Duan Xiaoyin and Duan Xiaoyue looked at each other. Could it be that she was telling the truth? Show us then. Duan Xiaoyin smirked. The 2 of them had their permits on them, and they could tell if Xiaoga's was a genuine one if she showed it to them. No problem. It's right here. Xiaoga reached into her chest pocket. Shit. Where was her exam permit? Xiao Wu had gone to a lot of painstaking effort to get her that exam permit. If she had lost it somehow. Xiaoga panicked. She smacked her forehead, trying to remember where she had put it. But she couldn't remember anything. Where's my exam permit? Where did I put it? My exam permit. Xiaoga was so flustered that she was almost in tears. Duan Xiaoyue and Duan Xiaoyin exchanged looks. Then both rolled their eyes. You liar. You're so vain. You don't have it, so stop pretending. Mr. Liu? And His Royal Highness? Seriously? You're unbelievable. You're not a bad actress, I'll give you that. Keep up the good work and show us your exam permit. Oh. Duan Xiaoyin and Duan Xiaoyue looked at each other and both burst out laughing. This was so much fun. That humble Duan Xiaoga was capable of telling lies now. I remember. Xiao Wu has it. Xiaoga said in excitement and heaved a sigh of relief. I didn't lose it, or it would be such a waste of Xiao Wu's efforts. However, Xiaoga had barely finished her sentence when, oh my, you can't keep up with your lie, so you're getting Feng Wu involved now? She helped you get the exam permit? Hahaha. Are you telling me that she was able to persuade all 3 members, Mr. Liu included? Duan Qiaoying decided that Xiao had lost her mind, for that was such an unbelievable story. Teehee, Duan Qiaoyue tittered. Sister, don't put it that way. Xiao put in a lot of effort to make up such a long story. Hahaha. I might actually believe her if she had said that someone else helped her with it. But Feng Wu, that genius turned useless Feng Wu? Oh God, Duan Qiaoge. Can you be any more delusional? Xiao was so mad. She didn't want to talk to these people anymore and she turned to leave. But they wouldn't leave her alone. Stop right there. Xiao ignored them. Where are you going? Duan Qiaoying frowned. To Xiao Wu's place, of course. Xiao snorted. Duan Qiaoying frowned. I heard that good-for-nothing snuck back from northern border city. It seems. Chapter 553 Feng Wu in Action. Chapter 553 Feng Wu in Action. It seems that she's as useless as ever. Duan Qiaoge, are you an idiot? Why are you still hanging out with her? Qiaoge could stand it if she was the only one Duan Qiaoying insulted, but she had insulted Feng Wu. Qiaoge spun around and slapped Duan Qiaoying in the face. She's not useless. The attack was so sudden and Qiaoge's hand moved unbelievably fast. Duan Qiaoying had no time to react. She was dumbfounded. You. Both Duan Qiaoying and Duan Qiaoyue had applied for Imperial College and were level 9 spiritual masters. After they realized what had happened, they charged at Qiaoge at once. Since Qiaoge had made a move, she wasn't going to back off now. Thump, thump, thump. A fight broke out right away. Qiaoge was only a level 7 spiritual master now and she was no match for a level 9, let alone 2 of them. Thump, thump, thump. Before long, Qiaoge had bruises all over her face and she took quite a few blows to the body as well. Duan Qiaoying smirked. Duan Qiaoge, is that all you can do? You hit me? You're dead. Thump. Duan Qiaoying slashed down with her palm turned sideways, and it landed right on Duan Qiaoge's forehead. That hurt. Qiaoge felt a dull pain in her head. Her vision went dark and she could see stars. Duan Qiaoge, die. Duan Qiaoying pulled a dagger out of nowhere and stabbed down at Qiaoge's heart. Duan Qiaoying was cold-blooded that way. Although Qiaoge was her sister, she was going to kill the latter because of that slap. Duan Qiaoge's head swam and she staggered about in all directions. She could barely keep her balance, let alone dodge the blade. It seemed that Qiaoge would be stabbed to death. Right at that moment. Thud. A leaf flew down and hit Duan Qiaoying on her wrist. That hurt. Duan Qiaoying's grip loosened at the pain and the dagger dropped to the ground just before it reached Qiaoge's chest. Meanwhile, Feng Wu stood on the wall. After Qiaoge was gone for a while, Feng Wu recalled the complicated relationships in the Duan family and decided to check up on the girl. Feng Wu knew where Qiaoge lived. Like herself, Qiaoge had been given the most remote courtyard in the family. Hence, she had jumped onto the wall and was going to run along it to get to Qiaoge's place. However, she saw what was happening before she entered the yard. Feng Wu was furious. How dare they bully Qiaoge, her friend? She picked a leaf from a nearby tree. Luckily, Feng Wu could still think straight and she covered her face with a black scarf. She couldn't let anyone else know about her cultivation ability for now. Who's there? Duan Qiaoying realized what was going on and a murderous look flickered in her eyes. Looking up, she saw a masked person charging at her. You. That was all Duan Qiaoying could say. The masked person then smacked her on the forehead. Thud. It was such a formidable blow. Duan Qiaoying flew back and crashed into a nearby wall. Rumble. The ramshackle wall collapsed at the impact and the bricks buried Duan Qiaoying. You. Seeing this, Duan Qiaoyue realized the danger and turned to run. However, she was only able to take a few steps when Feng Wu kicked up a stone and struck down with its sharp tip aimed at Duan Qiaoyue's back. Ah! Duan Qiaoyue cried out in surprise and fell forward on her face. What a sorry picture. Just then, Feng Wu sensed a great power surge out from deep inside the Duan family's house. Chapter 554 Xiao Wu. It's you. Chapter 554. Xiao Wu. It's you. Seeing Duan Chaoyue fall on her face, Chaoga rushed over, climbed onto her back, and pounded Duan Chaoyue's head with her fist. Thump, thump, thump. The strikes were relentless. But Feng Wu could sense a formidable power coming their way. There was no time to think. Grabbing Chaoga, Feng Wu said, "I like this chubby girl. She'll make a nice stew for my dinner. She's coming with me." After that, Feng Wu hurried off, dragging Chaoga along with her. Feng Wu and Chaoga had just jumped over the wall when a middle-aged man appeared in front of Duan Chaoyue. "What's going on, father?" Duan Chaoyue looked up and saw that it was her awe-inspiring father. She wrapped her arms around his leg and burst into tears right away. Duan Hongyi was going to go after the intruder, but with Duan Chaoyue holding his leg, he couldn't move. Phew! Feng Wu only let out a breath of relief after they were away from the Duan family. She was only able to handle Duan Chaoyue and Duan Chaoyin that easily because she was a level 4 spiritual grandmaster, and those two were only level 9 spiritual masters. There was no surprise there. However, the person that came afterwards was way above Feng Wu's level. She might be able to run away from him, but Chaoga would be in a lot of trouble. You can't eat me. I don't taste good at all." Chaoga stared at Feng Wu in alarm. Chaoga didn't recognize her. Feng Wu found the girl hilarious. She put on a long face and eyed Chaoga maliciously. "Chubby girls like you are my favorite. I'll slow cook you on a pan until the grease sizzles. It'll smell so good." Chaoga pictured herself sizzling in a pan and was almost in tears. But she still said stubbornly, I'm poisonous." Feng Wu stepped forward. "That's okay. Poison doesn't affect me." Do you know who Feng Wu is? We're good friends. If you eat me, she'll kill you to take revenge for me." Chaoga stared at the masked person, sounding nervous. Feng Wu couldn't hold it back anymore and burst out laughing. "You?" Chaoga recognized that voice and her eyes widened. Feng Wu then removed the black scarf over her face. "Xiao Wu, it's you." Chaoga stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. You. She hadn't detected any spiritual essence in Feng Wu all this time, so she just assumed that. She didn't realize that Feng Wu was such an advanced cultivator. "Xiao Wu you." Chaoga was more excited than if she had the ability herself. She ran up to Feng Wu and threw her arms around the latter. "Xiao Wu, you smacked Chaoyin down and kicked Chaoyue away in one go. Wow. Xiao Wu, you're incredible. What level are you now? Let me guess. Are you a level 1 spiritual grandmaster?" Feng Wu shook her head. "Level 2, then." Feng Wu shook her head again. "Level 3. Chaoga was thrilled. But Feng Wu still shook her head. "Not anymore." "Holy crap. You're a level 4 spiritual grandmaster? Oh my god." Chaoga's knees almost buckled. Feng Wu nodded. "Yes, for now." Chaoga smiled in resignation. A level 9 spiritual master is already good enough to qualify for the exam. "Xiao Wu you." Chaoga's cheeks flushed with excitement. "Those people all think that you have no spiritual essence and they all laughed at you. Are they blind?" "No, I was as blind as them." Chaoga buried her face in her hands and smiled bitterly. "I've been with you all this time. Yet I had no idea how amazing you are." Chapter 555 Astonished. Chapter 555 Astonished. Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. "I've been keeping it from everyone on purpose." "But why?" Chaoga was confused. Feng Wu said grumpily, "The people who did those things to me are still lurking in the dark. Revealing myself prematurely is as good as sending them an invitation to kill me, don't you think?" Chaoga nodded repeatedly. "That's right. Although I bet they'll be so shocked if they knew how wonderful you are already. I'll gladly shock them out of their minds." Feng Wu was in a great mood. Chaoga then glanced at Feng Wu in grievance. "You said you were going to eat me. I was so scared." "Hahaha." Feng Wu talked as she walked and she said grumpily, "If I didn't say that, your family would think that you were with me and you'd be in a lot of trouble." Chaoga found that explanation reasonable. Feng Wu went on, "Now that I've made it look like you were taken away, your family won't blame you. Moreover, it doesn't seem like they'll bother to search for you. After you go back with your achievements, you can tell them outright and honestly that they never tried to save you in the first place. Xiao was thrilled to hear that and her eyes lit up. With a single sentence, Feng Wu was making all these future plans for her. Xiao Wu, you're so smart. How did you come up with those things given the circumstances? Xiao scratched her own head. Why was she so dumb herself? Feng Wu patted her head. Enough of that. We have less than 7 days left and will have to prepare for both the written exam and the physical tryout. There's no time to lose. When they got back, they didn't even walk into the Feng clan manor, but went straight to Grand Secretary Feng's house next door. Grand Secretary Feng was composing a memorial to the throne. Xiao Wu was so talented, but she couldn't get into Imperial College because of His Royal Highness's intervention. It was such a loss to the school. The more Grand Secretary Feng thought about it, the more sorry he felt. In the end, he decided to write it down in a memorial to the throne. Other people might not dare to confront Jun Linyuan, but surely His Majesty would. Grand Secretary Feng was only halfway through the memorial to the throne when Feng Wu and Xiao arrived. The old steward was waiting on Grand Secretary Feng inside, and Steward Feng stood outside the room. After what happened last time, when Steward Feng had failed to recognize Feng Wu's talent, the man greeted Feng Wu warmly. Miss Feng, it's wonderful to see you. Please come in. Is your old master in? Feng Wu asked as she walked in. Yes, of course. The last thing Steward Feng would do now was stop her. His old master thought very highly of this young lady. Steward Feng showed Feng Wu to an inner living room. The old steward opened the door and let Feng Wu and Xiao in after recognizing them. Grand Secretary Feng still had half of the memorial to the throne to write when Feng Wu entered. He grunted. You came soon enough. How did it go? Did His Royal Highness give you a hard time? Feng Wu said innocently, no, he didn't. You don't have to pretend with me, Grand Secretary Feng said grumpily. Don't worry. My words still mean something and I'm writing a memorial to the throne to His Majesty. I don't know about other people, but His Majesty should be able to talk to him. Feng Wu was very touched. The old man was so nice to her that she almost felt bad about buying his house. Feng Wu opened her palm, revealing a little red booklet. What? The old man rose to his feet so abruptly that he stumbled. Chapter 556. You're not a cripple. Chapter 556. You're not a cripple. Feng Wu reached out in a hurry and steadied him. Watch out. The old man snatched the red booklet from Feng Wu and opened it. Feng Wu's personal information was indeed recorded in it. I have one too. Xiao presented her own as well. Only after Grand Secretary Feng examined both booklets was he convinced that Feng Wu had really received her exam permit. The old man hadn't thought much of the exam permit at first, but then Jun Linyuan got involved and all of a sudden it was hell mode for them all. You really have it? The old man was amazed. Didn't His Royal Highness try to intervene? Feng Wu had charged out, looking as if she was going to punch someone in the face. Grand Secretary Feng had thought that Feng Wu would be thrown out of the Crown Prince's residence for sure. However, not only hadn't she been thrown out, she had somehow secured the exam permits. Grand Secretary Feng found it hard to believe. Feng Wu nodded. I was lucky. Jun Linyuan had a breakthrough and he was in a good mood. So he made it easy for me. Grand Secretary Feng cried out. His Royal Highness made a breakthrough again. Exactly what level is he now? Feng Wu couldn't help but ask. It seemed that Jun Linyuan's cultivation level was a secret. The old man patted Feng Wu's head grumpily. That's a top secret of the Empire. You shouldn't even ask. Now that you have the exam permit, your most important task now is to pass the exam. Yes, Feng Wu and Xiao stood at attention and nodded solemnly. As for the physical tryout, Grand Secretary Feng sighed in resignation. Xiao can probably make do with a crash course, but what about Xiao Wu? She had no cultivation ability whatsoever, and the old man didn't know what to do. Xiao's eyes lit up. Xiao Wu wasn't a cripple. She was amazing. Right now the only people in the room were Feng Wu, Xiao and Grand Secretary Feng. Feng Wu smiled. then put the concealing jade back into her ring. If she hadn't seen the old man writing that memorial to the throne to Emperor Wu, she would never have realized how kind he was to her, which was why she decided to let him in on her secret. Grand Secretary Feng was deep in thought, trying to come up with some ideas to help Feng Wu. He turned around and saw Feng Wu beaming at him. The old man was disgruntled. "Kiddo, get serious. We're running out of time. The exam is in 7 days and you can't even." "Wait a minute." Grand Secretary Feng looked shaken all of a sudden. He rushed to Feng Wu's side and his voice trembled with excitement. "Kiddo, you." Staring at Feng Wu, the old man said in a shaky voice, "No, that can't be. That's impossible." However, Feng Wu only stood there as steady as anything, with perfect composure. "Show me your hand." Grand Secretary Feng stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave him her right hand, then activated her spiritual essence. A level 4 spiritual grandmaster. Grand Secretary Feng figured it out right away. "You have very sharp eyes." Feng Wu grinned. "You naughty kid." Grand Secretary Feng smiled wryly. "You're already very capable. Why did you go to all that trouble to hide it? Do you like to be called a cripple?" However, given how experienced Grand Secretary Feng was, he immediately realized why Feng Wu had done so. Chapter 557 Exam Papers. Chapter 557 Exam Papers. He figured it out almost right away. There's another explanation for that incident, isn't there? By that incident, he obviously meant the one 5 years ago when Feng Wu lost her cultivation ability. Feng Wu said yes. Grand Secretary Feng nodded. He now understood why the girl had to hide her real ability at the cost of all those insults and contempt. It was incredible that she could be this level-headed at such a young age. The old man liked Feng Wu even more. "But," said Feng Wu, "Xianyi doesn't know about my recovery." Feng Wu didn't finish the sentence, but Grand Secretary Feng knew what she meant. He nodded. "Your top priority now is to prepare for the written exam." Grand Secretary Feng then asked the old steward to fetch a stack of exam papers, then had the servants transcribe 2 copies. Meanwhile, Steward Feng was instructed by the old man to set up a couple of desks and chairs in the main hall. The papers, which still smelled of fresh ink, were laid out. Grand Secretary Feng casually sat down in the head seat and waved his hand. "Finish the papers in 2 hours." Feng Wu and Xiao looked at each other in bewilderment. Neither of them had studied the subjects or read the relevant books. The stack of papers was completely foreign to them. Feng Wu picked up the first paper. The first section was filling in the blanks. A few characters were missing from a verse and one had to fill in the missing parts. Feng Wu was well versed in books and could finish 5 out of the 10 problems. Xiao, on the other hand, was at a complete loss. She knew next to nothing about literary works. Feng Wu looked up at Xiao and shook her head with a wry smile. Although there were only 10 questions, they covered a very wide range. The study of nature, history, cultivation theory, formations, medicine, you name it. If one wasn't well read enough, they wouldn't even be able to understand the question. Read more chapter on novel full. Poor little Xiao. Feng Wu then moved on to the second section. One had to write something from memory. And the subjects covered were just as diverse. There was a random paragraph taken from some book, and the candidate had to write down the rest of the passage from memory. One could only answer the question if they had memorized the passage. Even after reading the passage, they might not be able to write down everything. However, if one hadn't even read it, then... This was the case with the sentence Feng Wu was reading. Courtesy is the standard by which intimacy and remoteness is determined. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Where was that sentence from? Although she had read a lot of books, she had never seen it before. Because she didn't know that sentence, she left the entire section blank. The third section consisted of multiple choice questions. Write down the options you deem correct in the bracket. The answer is only correct when it contains all the correct options and only the correct ones. Feng Wu read the questions, then rubbed her forehead. They were incredible. The subjects mentioned covered everything from astronomy and the universe to medicine refinement. No subject was left out, and candidates who weren't well read enough would fail miserably in this section. Section 4 was short answer questions. The name of a practice manual was mentioned, and the candidate needed to elaborate on the theory, techniques, and innovations. The name of the manual on Feng Wu's paper was Ice Everywhere. Ice Everywhere. Feng Wu was elated. She didn't have the ice attribute herself, but she had a peerless beautiful master who knew all the attributes in all professions. Her beautiful master used to explain all the attributes and skills to her. With his encouragement, she memorized everything, even though she hadn't understood most of it. Chapter 558 My Score? Chapter 558 My Score. Back then, Feng Wu used to be so confused and had to ask her master the reason for her memorizing all those theories and techniques. She wasn't going to have all of those attributes anyway. Her beautiful master told her that whether she had an attribute herself or not wasn't relevant. It was about recognizing her opponent's attributes and techniques. As the saying went, know the enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles with no danger of defeat. Hence, her beautiful master had urged her to learn all the techniques by heart. Back then, she had even talked to her master about making innovations to existing manuals. She had only been 5 or 6 and knew too little to innovate anything. Her beautiful master, however, was a different story. He was the man that could look down on the entire continent. He was like a god who stood on the clouds. If he wanted, nothing on this continent could escape his eyes. A casual comment on a practice manual could make men go wild with joy, or even create a grandmaster of a generation. Hence, Feng Wu was elated when she read the question for the 4th section. It was right up her alley. She wrote down her answer without hesitation. The 5th section was on auxiliary skills. From a list of questions related to auxiliary skills, one had to choose 2 and make improvements. The subjects covered formations, medicine refinement, sewing, smelting, and so forth. Feng Wu was looking at an incomplete formation. She soon saw that it was a medium-level formation, which could be turned into an advanced level one with some minor alterations. Given her formation skills, Feng Wu solved the problem in no time. The second question she chose was on medicine refinement, which she solved very quickly as well. Whoosh! Feng Wu didn't linger on any of the questions. She answered those she could answer, and as for those she couldn't, staring at them wouldn't change anything. After handing in the paper, Feng Wu turned around to look at Xiao. Feng Wu had at least answered part of the first few sections and had done well in the last section. But Xiao had chewed the end of her pen raw, but her paper remained blank. Xiao looked up and her face reminded Feng Wu of a poor, sad spiritual pet. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Xiao had a lot of work to do. After Feng Wu handed in her paper, Grand Secretary Feng began to correct it right away. The first section totaled 50 points and Feng Wu scored 25. The second section required her to write from memory, but since Feng Wu wasn't familiar with the text, she had left it blank, which meant she got a 0. Grand Secretary Feng wrote a big, round 0 on the paper with cinnabar. He then raised his head and gave Feng Wu a stern look. Feng Wu felt ashamed and bit her lower lip involuntarily. The third section was multiple choice questions. The requirement was very strict. The answer was only correct when all correct options and only the correct ones were selected. There were 10 questions in total and they could be on any subject. The frown on Grand Secretary Feng's face gradually eased as he read on. Feng Wu had answered 5 out of the 10 questions, and all 5 were correct. That was to say, as long as she knew the subject, she could get the correct answer. The 5 unanswered ones were on subjects she didn't know. Out of the total 50 points, Feng Wu got 25 again. Section 4 was short answer questions, and the candidate needed to elaborate on the theory, techniques, and innovations of the Ice Everywhere stance. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.